All right. So welcome everyone to the, I guess we're in May 15th, 2023 workshop for MSA. We just finished open forum and we're moving on to the next three topics for the agenda. We have the bylaws, strategic plan, expansion vision, and then discussion on community feedback. So if we are okay, we'll take them in that order. So signing approved bylaws. I guess maybe just a quick update, Hedl, on what's happened since our last meeting?
So Emma did a final copy for us, the final PDF, once the governance structure was looked at by the teachers. So from the drafts, the only change was to go back or stay the same at 432.
And that was at, sorry, if that's okay, that was at the meeting I think I missed. There was some discussion around changing to 333
April 15th.
on the April 15th meeting, and then the group decided to keep it 432?
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay.
Yes. Yep.
That was one of my questions, okay?
Well, and I guess also 2 students enrolled in grades 10 through 12. That was also
Yep,
a change.
for E, section C1.
Yeah, but I'm trying to think of what did we, because we had 2 students before.
It just said 2 students.
It just
We
said 2
added
students.
in
We added
grades
the
10 through
grades.
12.
And now we added grades 10 through 12, okay, gotcha, okay. Okay. And the teachers had a chance to review
Yes,
this version
and they signed off on the membership part, yeah.
on the membership part,
The
meaning
governance.
the 432. I have a copy here.
You do you want to
This one was
compare
from,
it?
this one was just provided tonight, it was on Caitlin.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, so this
I'm
is the
hoping that
most,
this is the,
Yeah, so I could, maybe if we can just eyeball it, there were just 2 typos that I think Maggie found
Maybe double
in
check.
the spelling
okay.
of 3 and the spelling of 4.
we changed the numbers in the terms, or the amount of people, but we didn't change the actual written out word.
Right,
Yeah.
so the number in parentheses was changed, and that was like 3 and 4 on the copy we got in our packet on last week. And
It's
so,
on page 4.
yep,
So we just want to make sure it's 4, 3,
See, it
2.
says 3 and then 4.
4,
Oh,
4,
yeah,
3,
like
3,
3,
2, 2.
So they changed the
Still-
numbers, but they didn't change the
So it
spelling.
has a number 3 and maybe 4.
Yeah,
so
so that's what's,
Is this
that's
correct?
what was
Yep,
sent to
this is
us.
right.
Okay, good. Any other changes?
No, I couldn't find any other mistakes. Did
Okay.
anybody else's eyes find anything? I went back through and I ran it through. But
So, we okay to sign them? I think it's myself, it looks like me, Maggie, Wendell, TJ. Yeah? These don't get changed that often, so, and it's not so easy to change. But to me, it looks cleaner, and a lot of hard work got us to this spot. I don't know how many hours were spent doing this, but yeah, okay? Last chance to speak up. Why I'm purple? Should I do it on a nicer?
Probably should be black or blue.
Next one was strategic plan expansion vision. So just to kind of lay it out there and we can discuss how we want to use this time. Thank you. We have a strategic plan. Normally we would say that that's every 3 years done. We did one last year, which I just printed off the kind of the board portion, which is the success for all students, organizational support for MSA vision and mission, and then facilities and infrastructure support MSA mission and vision. Basically, it later goes on to say we're supporting these 3 strategic priorities to form the foundation of our strategic plan. And so the thought is probably the thing that's changed the most since we did this in June of last year is the facilities / what have you. So and we've called out the expansion vision on here too. So I guess a proposal for us is to use this time to think about what, if anything, do we need to change or amend from our strategic plan that we had from last year, given where we're at right now? Or does it still stay as facilities and infrastructure to support the mission and vision. Do you want this, Heddle, or should I?
No, we can just go back to.
Okay. What do you guys think? What's the most beneficial use of our time here for the workshop? And I have one other one, which is discussion on community feedback, which was intended to, if we could, have any feedback on open forum. That was the idea. But we've got time. Yep.
Dan, I would say one of the things that came up in the facilities committee, and we spent the first part of our meeting discussing the why of expansion. And I do think that was a good conversation. And I think it would be who us as a board to just review the why. Why did we start 3 years ago with that concept, and why are we still in that same situation? So if you're looking for something that kind of falls in line with that, that piece seemed like an important element of our facilities committee.
Yeah. So talk through the why. I think we've gone around and around for probably the past 6 months, since the end of last summer, where we started looking at difficult to expand, should we look at a merger, those discussions, and now I think that discussion can be settled for now, so we're back to existing site or expand elsewhere sort of discussions. So I'm just wondering if we need to give any more guidance to administration or to the facilities committee. And I think you're right, maybe the why would be a good place.
And I think just for our stakeholders, that seems to be a really important element, especially since we kind of went through a merger discussion piece, right, that didn't net out anywhere, and that just means we're still in the expansion mode. So why did we start that process 3 years ago or so, and why is it still an issue?
So before we do that, I'm fine with that. I'm interested in the rest of your guys' thoughts, but what are the other two legs? The student
Success for all students.
success for all students, and
Organizational support of MSA vision and mission.
so I guess, Randy, I'll just put you on the spot. Where are we at with those two? Because I think we could spend the whole time on just the facilities bit, the final three, but where are we at with success for all students, and where are we at? I know, so underneath the strategy, there's pages of plans, right? So how are you feeling about those two?
The organization kind of follows a lot into the kind of our facilities as well. Because we're looking at that part of it. But I feel like we're getting better with organization. We have our evaluation system in place. We've been working on that. We have our structure. We're looking at our pay for staff, or for our staff. That's coming up today. I think that's a big piece of it as well. As far as our facilities, that's something we've talked about. We need to continue to work on that piece. But the organization is something I feel we're making strides. The success for all students, that's moving in the right direction. We have some things that we need to do. We need to look at like our graduation requirements. It's something that we've talked about addressing for next, it's going to take more than just a quick discussion. That's going to take a year-long type process as far as looking at that. Of course, test scores we don't have the ones back from this year yet. We'll see those. Our ACT scores were decent. Still we're right in our line with academic and our scores. What else?
One of the things of success for all students, we're talking about trying to close gaps for different groups of students.
And there's still our gap. I mean, that's something we identified the world's best workforce. In the presentation we presented in, I want to say November or December. The gap is closing. It's not as closing as fast as the state would like or our authorizer would like, but it's compared to the state, we're doing really well, but compared to what they're really looking at is when you're comparing your demographics is your students, not the state students. So how are our students of color performing against our white students? And there still is a gap that is larger than what our authorizer requires. So we're still working in that area. One thing we've done this year, I think, which has been helpful, is that we just need to put more time and extra we will is our SST teams, which is our success role. student success teams, and we met and we looked at what supports do our students need, those that are struggling, what can we provide. Unfortunately, we're only able to meet once a month. Next year, we'll be able to meet weekly, so that's going to be really helpful as we can address those students that are struggling and start closing those gaps by giving them more attention and working. We also feel with the block schedule that our teachers have more time within that structure of that lesson time that they can work with those students that need extra help. So we're excited about that as well. So I think we're making, we're moving in the right direction.
Other thoughts, comments?
I know for Success for All Students, being on the academics committee, we're looking at a bigger picture and diving more into DEI and having more discussions on what is the cultural background of the student who is needing our supports and what deficiencies might there be in relationship to our other students. I've noticed personally that a number of our students that are on SST are students of first-generation immigrants. So we're diving more into what are their cultural beliefs with education and how do they differ from traditional American school, and how do we close that gap and help assist the families with assisting their students' education.
And we're kind of actually next year, one thing our academic team is looking at this year, we really focus on our SST teams and cultural responsive teaching in the brain. Next year, we're really going into grading for equity, which I think will be a huge part of what
And what
we'll
would
just talk about as
SST
well.
stand for?
Student success teams,
Student Success Team.
which is really grade level teams.
Okay.
They talk about students that are struggling. They'll identify students through grades, missing assignments, attendance, behavior. They'll bring that to their SST team, and they'll discuss those students, and they'll talk about what interventions they need to put in place, how do we need to help these students. So they have those kinds of discussions in their meetings.
You know, in our last workshop, Paula applauded us for our restorative practice approach to our DEI policies, and I know we too has been doing some trainings on restorative practices and how to implement them within school to continue with our PIS strategies as well.
I think that's something, and we'll see when we talk about the surveys, that's something that come up with some of our approach to discipline, and I think the restorative practices will be beneficial, because that's some training that lead to, like I mentioned, is going to this June, so that's something we'll bring back to our team.
It's important to note that restorative practice is more than just discipline,
Yeah.
it's academics as well.
Yeah, there was some comments in the survey, which we can take later, but that I think there's a lot of opportunity to dig into a little bit more, right, and see what we can do, because some of the students were either saying they're not feeling like they want to go to school or not feeling comfortable or whatever. I mean, those sorts of things we need to kind of address, because then I would say, how are you successful if you're not comfortable? And I know we don't know who the student is who said it, but I think we need to, as an administration, figure out how do we address that. So it should be the odd comment, not a number of them, if at all. Yeah. So okay, well then it's easier for me to relate to the facilities than it is to your organization that you're leading here, and then Success for All Students. But I like your ad there of maybe if we can't, as you implement the plan for the following year, how do we address the DEI changes that we're trying to move through the organization. So it'd be nice to have some more of those specific ones. We had some from last year, if I recall, but maybe not as many as we could or should have. So that would be, but that's a little bit more the next level down, I guess, underneath this Success for All Students.
That umbrella, which is our MTSS program, which is multi-tiered systems of support. So we're kind of working, which is our PLCs, our student support teams, our grading for equity. All that really fits under that umbrella that we've implemented this year. So we're just starting that process in our PLC teams, and we're getting more in depth now. We'll start working on, learning targets, and we'll start working on formative and summative assessments. All that kind of fits in with our grading for equity, and kind of all as part of that process.
EJ, can I put you on the spot? Would you be able to kind of like just share the whys that were heard at the, some of the bigger whys? We can start from that and see if the board has anything else to add. Because maybe that's a good use of our time, is to just get that story clear.
Sure.
Because I think we get a lot of questions about why, right? And if we can help the community understand the why, then I think we're halfway there, right?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I'm not gonna kick it off with just some of the discussion that was had at that committee meeting. And please help me fill in if I'm kind of missing some of the points that we tried to capture. The concern was, we've been through kind of a process, right? We've been through this merger discussion, and it came about rather sideways. And as we approached it, we kind of said, well, maybe possibly that could be some solution to what we had been talking about with the expansion about 3 years ago. But there was still kind of a question with a lot of parent stakeholders as to, why do we have to do this anyway? I mean, we've got a great thing, which is to leave well enough alone and everything will be fine. And I think that's a valid concern, a valid question. And as we discussed some of the reasons why that is really hard to do with the economic system and the way schools are funded and the way we want to try to maintain this school for its excellence. And I had raised the concern, and I'll own it myself, that if we're not able to adequately and equitably fund new teachers coming into our school, so that we're not able to get our first or second choices because they can go down the road and take a job making $20,000 more, well then it's going to be harder to maintain the school that people really feel strongly about, right? And I think we all feel that that's one of the key components on why MSA does work, is the caring and the competent and educated staff and experienced staff that we have. But if we're hiring all teachers coming straight out of college because that's what we can afford to do, that's going to be harder to go by. So I guess the concern was, well, what other things could we do to maintain the footprint? And then we got talking about other expansion ideas, and I can share those more when we get to that expansion committee. But at least from my take, and again, I speak for myself, I think that's a very important reality as to why there is discussions about expansion. Because if we want to pay teachers equitably, and there's tinkering, sure, any school can do tinkering and save thousands of dollars a year or a couple of $100 here, but when it really comes down to it, if we can't be on the same pay scale as the neighboring school district, we're not going to get that teacher. And I speak from experience because I was in a hiring team looking to add an employee within our department, and we had 2 of the finest, wonderful candidates apply and interview, and neither of them could take the job because it wasn't financially feasible for them to do so. And to miss out and to lose out on that kind of experience and individual, that hurts our school. So I think we have to be real that there is a need to add students. The only way we could do that here in this environment is to somehow expand. There are different ways we could go about that. And I think as we go through that discussion, it's important that we keep the why in mind as to why we're doing that, so that we can maintain the school and even push it further.
Even beyond the pay for teachers, we had a meeting this morning looking at our finances. It's even curriculum. We're trying to how can we, afford to, we're looking at social studies and what can we bring in? How much money do we have to spend? It's beyond just the teacher's salaries. It's also, continue with the curriculum to provide this education. It's also, do we want to add programs? We're talking about adding some different electives for students. Well, that takes money as well because we need to buy new curriculum for those electives. So that all takes money as well. So there's other things that we want to continue to provide the best education we can for our students here at Math and Science Academy, and our revenue is kind of capped when we can't add more students, since that's our biggest revenue source. So it's beyond just the salaries, which is important because we want to keep retention. We have some incredible teachers. If you have they leave every year because of it, then you're always bringing new people. That impacts your culture. So all those kind of work together. So, you know, there's many reasons, you know, and I think also when this was discussed a couple of years ago, we gotta remember, we have new families that have joined MSA in the last 2 years, and have we talked about the why with them? So I think it's great, like you did, right, that we revisit that because we have these new families and they need to know, well, why don't we just stay like we are? They don't understand the process that went into place 2 years ago and where we're at. So I think that's important that they hear that as well, that why of why we're expanding. Instead of just, oh, let's just stay small. Well, we can only do that for so long.
It might be, if we have it, I haven't seen it, but, you know, on our website, if we just have a clear, like, you know, why are we expanding? If we end up with a few bullet points, that might be nice just to.
I was just looking for that,
Yeah.
as you mentioned that, because I was like, I thought we had an expansion merger
Somewhere.
topic on here, but
Well, if you can't find it,
can't
then
find
maybe
it.
we
because I thought it was one of these top lines,
have
so
some opportunities, yeah. Okay.
Justin must have removed
Just
it.
remove the merger.
The merger bit, yeah, okay.
They were
They're-
together, so.
Otherwise?
Otherwise, at our next facilities meeting, I'd be happy to ask the
Oh,
committee.
sorry, I mean,
to-
otherwise,
otherwise,
not otherwise.
otherwise.
Additional wise.
No, I would love some more. I mean, I've written down teachers' curriculum opportunities.
One thing I think we talked about a little bit was so more kids, but, so more kids that can attend, right? So right now we have a wait list, which is part of the reason why we're successful, is because there is a wait list, so it's kind of like a chicken egg thing. But I would say, how do we provide what we work so hard at to get to more kids? And then, but to build on that, because then selfishly, what does that give us? I think that also gives us the ability for these more classes, right? You know, like I think when I hear some of the students talk about, they compare how many AP classes we have versus Eastridge or versus Woodbury or whatever. And if we are, you know, accelerated and we're rigorous and all of this, then we should have at least as many, I believe, at least as many offerings. And we're talking about doing it, and we just need maybe more students so that we can kind of shuffle around and bring in more teachers to be able to support these additional classes that we'd love to do. You know, you talk about robotics or engineering and others, and some are coming, but how do we do more? It seems like one answer is to bring in more students. Still keep the small class size feel, which is important. It's going to be hard to keep a small school size feel if you have, you know, a big number. But, you know, we also talked at that meeting, we talked at a separate meeting, you, myself, and Mr. Vang, from different, about how, you know, like 2,000 students is starting to get to be a bit much if you start with 600, right? I mean, maybe a more realistic number is 900,000, you know, somewhere in there where you're saying in 5 years what's reasonable. It may not be reasonable to triple. And that was the number that we were looking at because of finances. We were never going out and saying we wanted to have so many kids. But so I think we were looking at slightly smaller.
1,000 or 1,200, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, maxing at doubling, but over a course of
Maybe
5 years and
yeah.
being able to adjust to that. I mean, some of the other discussions we have are looking at potential other options, and we're continuing to pursue that in committee. And remaining within 833, I think, is a very critically important element because the transportation costs, as been kind of described and discussed here at the board, isn't really feasible to be able to do some of these other things, to increase teacher pay and get the curriculum. And I mean, if we're spending that money on moving kids out of our own pocket. So, you know, maintaining within 833, I think, is also a critically important element that I've heard from parents.
You're right, but I wonder if that's more of a how. Is that fair?
Very well could be, yeah, for sure. I think.
I want to make sure we have the
Yeah,
why.
no,
So
that's-
we have the finances, which means our revenue needs to be more than our expenses. And right now, we're good for the next number of years, but we can see where the expenses go up every year, right? So I think that's the big thing. That's why we can't stand still. Because if we stand still, then we can tell you how many years we can last, right? More or less. So I think that's the biggest why for expanding, but that's the same for most schools, unless you can levy and bring in some extra cash that way, right? And then I have the extra classes, additional educational opportunities and choices for students.
curricular growth.
Curricular growth.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Just a
That's what
growing,
you're talking about,
yeah,
is
yeah,
just
okay.
curricular
Gotcha.
growth.
We'll call it curricular growth, okay.
And then I would say another why is the facilities themselves. Right, we're going to be in the process of having some rooms to make additional room space this summer. And so that's going to you know, certainly there's always going to be some movement of offices and classrooms and that kind of thing. That's just natural standard course. But when we're at that point where we're, you know, trying to carve out 3 rooms or 2 rooms out of 1, that means we're up against the threshold of what this space, this facility will allow for right now as is. So I think that's also a why.
To that point, do you ask any student what are their biggest complaints or their biggest thresholds of their education? Is the hallways are too small? I have to climb 3 flights of stairs. Like, so facilities is definitely a big picture. So I'm wondering, is it possible at your next meeting, DJ, to take these ideas and create sort of like a mission statement or a goal so we can have that posted as here's our why and here's the direction we're moving in?
Yeah, I think our team would be fantastic at that, and I think that would be our first order of business, is to maybe make another statement that can go up on the website in conjunction with facilities expansion, whatever we want to call it, maybe a combo platter.
Yeah.
But create a mission statement for why. that
And
is.
I didn't mean to cut you off on the how. I have heard, and I agree with you, that 833 is a strong ask, right?
Mhm.
If we can keep this site as a strong ask, somehow, some way, if we can do that, right? We avoid the transportation issues and maybe save some money of buying a new site, right? If we can recycle building B at least. Anything else? Otherwise, I think that's a great, so I have 3, the finances, the curriculum growth, and the facilities need updating,
I mean,
expansion.
can we hear from Randy? What are your thoughts on where we're at here?
For facilities?
Well, just
Or for-
The why.
creating a mission statement and our why for expanding.
Well, I think, we talked about the why. I think that's where it starts, right? So it's important. We need to identify the why. And, I'm hearing from some of the committee that really never happened at the beginning, so I think it's really important that we back up and really communicate that to all our stakeholders, that why. But then also, we need to look within and see what do we need for to continue this education? We gotta look and see what we have for a curriculum. We need to put a curriculum review cycle together. We've talked about that, and some of that all takes money as well. And it's looking at what are we teaching with right now? What resources do our teachers have to teach and do the best that they can if they're not having the right resources to utilize, right? So we got to look at that, get our review cycle going. We also, looking at even the survey, our facilities, that we got dinged a little bit on our, so they're getting old, and the hallways are tight, our rooms are small, there's lots of things that we need to address. There's no way we can have large class sizes, we don't have space for it, if you look at our classrooms, the technology, that's another piece too. There's so many whys why we need to expand to continue where we started with math and science, and it continues with that great education, because without more revenue, it's going to be very challenging, not just teacher pay, but all the other pieces for teachers to do their jobs and for students to have those. And all the other things that students come to school for too, to compete with. We have lots of clubs, we have lots of activities and athletics, and that all takes revenue too, with transportation and with, paying stipends for coaches and equipment, all those things cost money, and students come to school. And if you look at, we have a large percent, I think 70% of our students are in some type of a club or activity, which is exciting, and that's great. But that all takes, you only raise so much on the fees. So there's so much we need for our students, and that revenue and that expansion is really important. And our facilities are worn. They are worn out, and you can see it in our parking lot, you can see it in some of our rooms and just going around, and we need to address it. It all takes, unfortunately, it takes revenue to do that, it takes money. And, if for math and science continue with what we're providing, we need to expand. And that's again, everybody can see that.
Any thoughts?
Any more? Good.
Could I ask that the finance committee maybe look at, I think we're in a unique opportunity now where we can reflect on where we've been with the facilities committee, be able to kind of reflect on that. Like, what do we feel has gone well so far? What are some things that we need to maybe go back and revisit? Because I think we've had some missed opportunities that we can definitely go back and reflect on as we
Yeah, I
move
don't,
forward.
I think that's always good to be reflective. It's one of the things I teach as part of the project process in my class. That's just as important as all the other elements. And I think that'd be a great thing for us to look at as a whole. You know, I'm reticent to go back in history and do that, but I think it's also important to take a look. I agree with you that it's important to take a look at what got us here and where were the missteps and how can we avoid those in the future? And then how can we set a course of action that's ours so that we don't have some other entity come in and impact that? So, you know, our vision is our vision. So, yeah, I think that would be part 2 of coming up with a mission statement for our next meeting.
A little more tactical, if you will, but how do we get back to NTH as well? How and when? Do we provide them an update of, you know, the merger is not there, so I think we owe them. Okay.
I would like to ask for a clarification because I don't know what our agreement was when we entered into that because I wasn't on the board at that time. So, you know, curious as to what our commitment is at this point. I mean, do we have an obligation?
I mean, we put it kind of on pause because we were looking at the merger and we had a lot of questions, so we were on pause. So I think, I don't know.
And that'd be a conversation with them. So right now, yes, it's been on pause just because we haven't been moving forward with it. So we didn't want to continue to pay for something we're not using right now as we were kind of investigating with the merger process, right? So we kind of.
But we signed paperwork with them, is that what you're?
That's what I'm asking. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
want us to be in a situation where we're not honoring an agreement that we've signed, so.
That was something I was gonna ask when we got to the facility minutes, was there's been a conversation with JB Vang, and we're still working with another company. I just think that's bad business that we're reaching out to another contractor when we haven't even wrapped up with the one that we're currently.
Yeah, I'll give a little
involved
bit
in.
more when we get to that as to how that came
Yeah.
about, but, yeah, I think that's also my concern too, Wendell's, I don't wanna be doing wrong by the company that we've been in, you know, and they've provided a great deal of information and work, so,
Yep.
you know, if we're still obliged, then it would just be nice to know.
I'll look at their contracts, insurance or all.
And then once we have some position, it'd be nice to figure out what do we want, you know, how do we work together with them, or do we need to just say, we need to move on to something else? I don't know, whatever that is, but I guess it's just a question of how do we handle that? We need to handle it professionally, right? So, yeah. Okay, any other thing on facilities? We hit that one pretty okay.
I know we have on the discussion for a town hall listening session later tonight.
Yeah.
Could a question be proposed during that session on what the community feels is a vision for expansion? So we're getting that community
Yeah.
insight now that we, like I said, are at a unique situation where we can look at it with fresh eyes.
Yep.
We had called it a reset.
Yeah.
In our committee meeting, yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's a great term maybe to kind of look at, right?
So the next topic, C, was discussion and community feedback. The idea was, you know, we're always in this state where we can't respond as a board, and it's gotta feel a little awkward to come up and have some concerns raised and then silence, right? So this was the attempt to try to change some things there. So I'll speak real quick too, because I've had a couple questions come up. The only reason we chose 5 o'clock was just so that we didn't have to kind of keep doing YouTubes on and off and on and off. That was it. So if there's another time that works better for the community, we can do that too. We just got to get real proficient at being able to turn on and off. The reason we had a discussion, and if those unable to hear the last April meeting, we discussed as a board some different options of how to handle it. I think what we've seen, and I'll just speak from what I've seen, is we've had sometimes where the board has talked over, and I'm not saying it's the folks in the audience now, but it wasn't necessarily addressing the board, it was addressing the YouTube audience. And so we just thought, you know, is this the right forum for that, or is there other social media forums or texts or chats or what have you? So there's no requirement for us to stream. We're choosing to stream, and we like to stream because there's nothing for us to hide. But at the same time, if it's going to be kind of misused, if you could use that term, and I'm not saying every comment was by any means, but there was a few over the past few months where it's just like, I I wish we weren't talking names. I wish we weren't talking about investigations, things that are private data, concerns or complaints about individuals. All of that needs to be done in a different format. And so it was kind of putting us in a tough spot as a school where we want to provide it, but then at the same time, it creates a lot of extra work for us on the back end. So I think emails to the board is sufficient. If you have a concern, they need to be addressed that way too. And if they're not being addressed, then take it up, with the authorizer, I guess, and say the board is not doing what they need to do. But so I'm not convinced this is 100% the right way. We tried it. I am convinced that it's nice to try different things and not always do the same thing. So we had only one tonight that could speak to the fact that maybe it's not a good time, because in the past we've had 5 or 6, and that's better. So let's see. So that's the technicalities of the whys and the wheres and what we did with the open forum. But I have, and it's up to you guys if you're okay with it, we have on the discussion topic, one of them is on committee and community member feedback. That was item 16G. If you guys are okay, I'll pull a little bit of that forward, just because it kind of fits into this discussion on community feedback. Are you all right with that? The other option I would say is we break, because we don't have any other topic until 6:15. I do want to keep to the 6:15, because if somebody wants to tune in live from home, it's not fair if we've already started, in my opinion. You guys all right with that?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's important for us to maintain that opening start.
The 6:15 time? Okay.
Can I ask
Yeah,
just a
yeah.
question, since I'm new at this? Is there a reason why there isn't response immediately?
Yeah, so, good question. I think the statute, and Heddle's more of an expert than me, but I'll start. My understanding is open forum is required for open meeting laws. Streaming is not, actually, it's not even required. It's suggested, if you will, but we chose, and we like to have open forum. So we've chosen to include that. I think the way we wrote it is our agenda may include, right, open forum, and we typically do include open forum. And so the reason that the way I understood it is we're not in a position to be able to respond. Let's say somebody comes with an allegation about something or someone. There's no due process. There's no way to have a discussion. All you hear is one person's side. And that's what's happened over the past few months is one side gets leveled and the rest of us are left. How do you respond to that? So usually what we say is we can take the notes, we can come back and either handle it off in a closed session or a separate meeting, or bring it to the next board meeting if that's what's required. So it gives the board a chance to kind of prepare a response.
And so what is this discussion on, how does that feedback?
So this is just a general one. And I was just going to throw out some, one of the things, the opportunities I get as the board chair this year is I get a lot of the feedback, and some of it just comes directly to me. So I was just going to throw out some topics and see if there's any of you guys wanted to just talk through. And then we can.
This is from MSBA.
So, yeah, no board action at the same meeting, except as determined by the school board to be necessary or in an emergency. Will not take action at the same meeting on an item raised for the first time by the public, which is probably good practice. I think we could run the risk of making the wrong decision.
Misspeaking.
Yep, so I can throw, unless you guys want, I had a few topics that we can talk about which ones make sense. So community engagement, I think sometimes and I'll just throw them out there and then we can pick one, if that's okay. Community's feeling that they're not always getting engaged or they don't know the right way to engage. Sometimes they're trying and maybe they come to open forum, maybe they try email, maybe whatever. But I still get the sense that they're not feeling like they're being heard. So how do we get that community engagement? Open forums we've talked about, so we just covered that one. I have had some comments on policies on the website. So maybe we'll approve something, but I've had comments of what we approved is not what's on the website, or they can't find it on the website. So how do we, and just a comment of how do we improve the way that we manage our policies so that the process by which we do policies is not the thing that we're talking about. We're talking about the content of the policies. Consent agenda, so the comments that I've heard is basically misusing the consent agenda, where I think in the past we had more newer items on the consent agenda, and so now it's a topic we can talk about. But the idea is, can we make the consent agenda just, simple contracts, or maybe just a simple red line of a change of a name or something like that, not adding MSA instead of the school, things that nobody's going to have a discussion about. So how do we get to that? Is the request. I did make a change on the website, the way we described committees. So we had committees and subcommittees, and recall we got some legal advice here, a couple of months ago, which said how to handle the open meeting laws and whatnot. So I reworded that, and I just asked that the administration update that based on what I understood from our legal advice. So take a look at that. I removed the subcommittee section and just have committees now, because I think we at one time it was a little too complicated, and I was part of that, so I'm not blaming anyone. But and then we did have, it came up again tonight, this merger impact. So I haven't actually watched all of the other WLAs, but school board meetings and YouTubes and whatnot, but did or have we had an impact on the merger negatively, the way that we behaved as a board is a comment that I've heard. And again, tonight. So those are some topics. Does anything strike you and say, I want to talk about that, I have my opinion? This is...
Is this what you're changing?
Yeah, should be. Subcommittee. We'll have to double check the subcommittee, because maybe I wasn't clear when that was supposed to be removed.
Okay.
But I reword the words for the board committee section to be, hopefully it's compliant with what we were given. Any topics? Have you guys had others? Community feedback that maybe just came to you, or if you want to comment, sometimes we get an email to the whole board. If you have
Timing of committee meetings?
the timing, yeah. So we kind of have both. Some people are available in the evenings, and some people are only available in the day. And but I think I probably hear more requests for evenings, which is a stretch for some of our teachers, right? Working during the day and staying till later. But a lot of us probably also have day jobs too. So same.
That may change though with the new schedule next year.
Yeah. Yeah.
With more meetings being throughout the day, we might have more availability for mornings, we may have some after-school availabilities too. I guess I would, one of the things I've heard too, and I struggle with it myself too with preparing for board meetings, is when we look at the revisions of their policies, is it possible to, with the first reading, have exactly what is being either redacted or changed? Because I know in Google you can do the commenter suggestions, and then on the second reading have what it's going to look like finalized. Is that possible? I mean, it's just a lot of work.
We've gone back and forth about this a
Yeah.
lot, and it's, honestly, it's the time. We're shorthanded.
I would say, Heddle, I asked that we are not spending hours going through and copying and pasting things. The hope with going to the more standard format is that we can then get to a spot where the red lines are more obvious. Because I think the problem we have right now is ours have kind of evolved over 20, 25 years, whatever, to a state where it was so different, it was hard to keep track of which words are different and not. So,
Gosh, though, honestly, no, I can't do it. I was gonna say, I almost feel like I end up doing that before I come into these meetings, is try to identify for myself what the change is.
it's not easy.
I can't commit to doing that, but I mean, I end up doing it, so.
What I was thinking is like,
I know
and
what
the
you're saying.
language arts teachers can speak to it more when they're reviewing a paper from a student. Google has this setting to comment where it just kind of like crosses out, tells what's being changed.
It's not, it doesn't, it wouldn't be adding
It's
work,
like
it would just be showing
suggested
your work.
edit.
Yeah, it'd be showing your work,
Yeah.
basically.
That would make it easier than, rather than going back
Yeah.
and going, what did they change?
Yeah, it's suggested edits, I think it's,
I mean, do you need help with that? Do you
Kind of like we
need?
did with the handbook.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was redlined, right? And that is a
Yeah,
little bit easier to
comments on the
follow,
side where
yeah.
We had multiple people looking at it, maybe comments.
We have.
I mean, yes, the work itself is, yes, we're going through, we're reading and understanding what that policy is.
So then I would take that document and just save it in a separate file? And then where should I drop that?
Like a working file or something? Well, if we have our monthly, I guess we don't know if it's gonna be in that month, do we? But, you know, we have that, oh, then not everyone on the committee has access to the board folder, right? That's part of the problem.
You can give others just
Access to the
commenting,
document.
you
To a-
know,
to a document,
but they
not
can't
the whole
make
folder.
editing, you know.
Right.
Right, so that way we wouldn't have to worry about someone going in and changing things. They could just provide comments, but they can't go in and edit it.
Edel, do you use Adobe or are you using Microsoft?
I can use Adobe, I can use Microsoft.
I guess I'm more familiar with Google, so.
I think Microsoft can show all those changes and suggestions as well.
It can.
And then perhaps, you know, where we have current and proposed, you could have working or something, you know, revisions.
Okay.
One other, along those same lines, I sometimes get the request of, you know, or the, it would be the request that the community has access to the information a little bit sooner. So right now, if you think about it from a community standpoint, right, Wednesday, we try to lock down the agenda best we can. Friday, we post it to the board. Monday it becomes public for folks, and it is a fair ask to say that's a little bit much if they have day jobs too, to have a read through and decide to come and make a comment or not, right? So it's just a request we could consider as maybe back that up a few days. It's totally up to us to decide how and when we do it. So,
I have a suggestion.
okay, let's hear it.
I was gonna wait until the end of the meeting, but I would love to see us consider moving our meetings to Thursday. Just gives us more time during the week. Maybe if we still got them out on Monday, that's 3 days for people to review. Same for us. People aren't scrambling to make revisions over the weekend, and that can get hard too when we've gotten one copy and then it gets revised by Monday morning. So I
Yeah.
just throw that into the mix.
Well, and as somebody who spent Saturday going through the packet and then coming to work today and finding emails, I was less than thrilled.
Yeah.
Because I spent Saturday on purpose so I could have my Sunday and I was ready. And so then that's frustrating.
Can we, so I like the suggestion, can we take that with the board that sits in July as we, you know, as we lay the days out? I mean, we discussed it with, because I think we have a few new folks coming on, so what would that look like for Thursday nights? And I think the process of how we set our agendas is defined by us, so we can decide to change that to the days and whatnot.
I would volunteer we could even do that by June, just because to me, and I guess selfishly, Thursday isn't the weekend, Monday can kind of be the tail end of a weekend, and so, you know, it just maybe provides a better opportunity.
So you want to move the June meeting to a Thursday or something?
I would have no problem doing that.
It's already on a
I'm
Tuesday
only
because of
one-
Juneteenth.
Oh, it is on Tuesday.
Yeah.
I'd have to look, I haven't looked that far ahead
It
yet.
is
Yeah.
on Tuesday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would be in favor of that, but, I mean, another proposal as far as the policy reviews, because I know that there's a number of them that were so outdated that needed the revisions right away. Is it possible to put at the end of our meeting minutes future items and then have the next set on the agenda so that community can take a read through it and then reach out to Hedl before and give some feedback while they're working through it? I mean, is that an option? Because, I mean, eventually we want to try and get into a rotation.
So I think, just to build on that, I think the normal way, if we have some change, there may be some discussion, so that's kind of like first read, and then second read and approve, so hopefully we don't miss any one of our communities. I think we missed some folks when we had consent agenda, you know, and then kind of passed. So I'm wondering if we don't capture your concern by listing it, if there's a, I don't know, what do you know?
Sorry.
If there's, definitely if it's discussed, and a discussed one should be one that we've made some change more than just a name or a corrective, a typo
Yeah.
or something like that, then it should be in
But I'm
discussion.
just suggesting like.
Yeah, have the
For-
500 series or what have you.
Future items
Yeah.
for June and then have those listed. I mean,
Yep, yep.
I mean, communication is what's being requested of us, and I think that that's a way to do it, but I also think, I mean, if we're just changing from the school to MSA or the Math and Science Academy, those things really
Should be
don't
okay.
need that much attention.
So what has been happening in May is the committee, which is just a really small group, is kind of taking the lead from admin on which policies to do next. So for example, if the admin is working on the handbook, they get some advice from their HR coordinator to update these policies. And so then we quickly agenda those because we have weekly meetings.
Mhm.
So I think we have to collaborate with admin.
Because some of
To
the
set
policies we do
forward.
also reference other policies, so.
Yeah.
right, so-
Yeah, to really get that systematic flow going and to be able to know what's coming down the pipeline more than 5-6 days in advance.
I know it's a busy time of the year, but is that something that could be figured out over June time, so that way when July comes, we can start that rotation?
Yes, yes, we can.
Are we in a spot, I think, are you talking about like the annual review?
Mhm.
Yeah, are we in a spot yet to be able to do that? We still have,
Well, there's certain policies that we have to annually review.
yeah, okay.
And there's certain that we're just still trying to convert over to the MSBA
Yeah.
charter model.
Yep.
Just in the 400s, almost 500, 600, something there. So
It's 900, the final one,
There's less in the.
in the other ones,
The
okay.
5s and 6s are a lot, that's all
Yeah.
personnel and
Okay.
coming up, so there's.
Would you say that a lot of these changes in those policies are updating, like to meet MSBA's
Is
recommendations?
there very much of a difference between district and charter? And what we have adopted and what, like, 414 and 415, there's really no change except the statute numbers included is the difference. And then, for example, 404, which I'm actually going to pull off, does have a material change that we need to discuss, which is, well, we'll discuss it, but, so it really varies because in the district ones, we made our changes.
Mhm.
For example, when we pull 404 off, we'll see that we made a change. Do we want to make that change? And do we want to incorporate the change? But it's more of a discretionary policy, right? It's one that we can adjust a little. But for example, it's not on the consent agenda, but policy 405, the veterans' rights. It's all statutory, so I guess we could. What can we really do with it? We shouldn't sit here and try to change it.
It's a new policy for us.
It's a new
so.
policy.
And that's why it makes sense to put on discussion, but we can just have that discussion like you're saying, and then we move on.
Yeah, well, I guess I'll just speak honestly. It's such a voluminous amount of statutorily mandated policies that even though, if we just use 405 as an example, we don't have any discretion. So if we were to change anything, it would not be best practice of us, right? So when it goes on something like that is in it's in the governance drive, it's shared with the entire board. Everybody gets to see Emma's red line, and it's transparent for the entire board. So when it goes on the consent agenda, it's been in our she prepped that one. Oh, maybe 6 weeks ago? Yeah, 6-8 weeks ago. So it's been sitting in everybody's
So
access. So why wouldn't it go on the consent agenda?
I don't disagree insofar as the what we can do, but I think the image of transparency and whatnot can be handled easier if we put it on a discussion topic and we say, we don't have any discussion, this is statutorily required. And then it's open as opposed to, because we don't talk the consent agenda items. And so then it looks, I'm not saying it is, it looks like things are just being crammed into a spot for convenience or ease, or an agenda, whatever, it doesn't, people will draw their own conclusions to what it looks like if we don't have it. So I would say only for the communication and the transparency is why I would support leaving it as an item to be discussed.
Yeah, I also think that, I do, I see that. I see that need at that point completely, but, we have also been a school that has taken liberties with statutorily mandated policies that we shouldn't have. Made changes that we shouldn't have made to those. So, you know,
But
we
we're
can take it
fixing
off
it.
and discuss it,
We're fixing it,
absolutely.
yeah.
But it's
Um,
really important
to-
that we identify what we ought to change and what we should just respect.
And to the point of process too, if there is a point of a need for discussion, we should be motioning to move those items during the beginning of the meeting to make sure that they're discussed, if there is a need for discussion, but
And, you know, nothing is ever too late in wonderful public schools, right? Like, if we notice a mistake tomorrow, or if there's a statutory change, we've got to be able to, we have to be willing to embrace that. We've got to flex, and we have to stay current. And we have to be willing to take another look, fix errors, stay current. I mean, that's,
Good.
you know, they're not small things, but we can work on it and fix it, or, you know, we should always make the changes that are coming down and stay current, so.
Good discussion. Can I ask that we take a break? At
6:10?
6:03 right now.
Oh,
That one's
sorry,
off,
that
yeah.
clock is throwing me
It's-
when we need
yeah.
batteries.
that one was freaking out earlier today in the other room, so.
So we will come back at 6:15. Can we go ahead and turn the You're right towards the beginning.
Special one.
So, all right, are we on? Okay, welcome everyone. This is our 6:15, May 15th, 2023 school board meeting. So we'll call it to order at 6:15. I didn't ask, but Noah, are you able to read the mission and vision for us?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the vision is to be an innovative, sustainable model of academic excellence for all students that creates well-rounded, lifelong learners and global citizens. The mission is we provide accelerated and inclusive curricula and instruction in all subjects with an emphasis on math and science.
Great. Does anybody want to read the land acknowledgement? Otherwise I can. I haven't done it yet, so thank you. So I'll read our land acknowledgement. We would like to acknowledge that the land at which we gather is the land of the Ochiti-Shakowi, the people of the Seven Councils Fires and the Wapekote band. It is within MSA's responsibility and academic institution to disseminate knowledge about indigenous peoples and their history with this land. MSA works to build relationships with Native American students and families through academic pursuits and historical recognition. So now we'll switch to roll call. So Dan Ellingson here, Wendell Sutton,
Here?
DJ Johnston,
Yep.
Maggie Burgraff,
Here.
Teresa Ward,
Here.
Hedel Patel,
Here.
and Stephanie Luque. All right, so everyone's here tonight, and we have Joseph.
I just want to say sorry for coming late. I just had practice that
No
I came
problem.
from all the way in Minneapolis.
Welcome, and Noah as well, here. Great. So now we have the approval of the agenda, but first, any conflict of interest for tonight? So make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second it, and then.
Okay.
Discussion.
Discussion. So Maggie seconds. So discussion?
First thing is move proposed policy 404, the charter model, to discussion section.
Okay. Can we make it discussion, what would be G, J, K? Is that okay? I think that's normal practice. We'll do that 404.
And I think 16 H is supposed to be May 23rd, not March 23rd.
Can we just scratch the date until discussion is had?
We can, yeah, I mean, we can have a discussion. So I'm fine with that too.
And 404 is moved from consent to discussion.
SK.
Okay, yep, 404.
To 16K.
Thank you.
Others?
And just a quick question. During the director's report, I have the survey results that I was going to talk about, but I also see it's in the decision or discussion section too, so we want it in both locations.
Yeah, good question.
I can wait with the director's report and just discuss it when we get to it.
If you're open to that, we can do it there too. Sure, okay. Anything else?
Do I give my second one now? Or do we have to vote on that first? Or pull off?
I think the four,
Oh, go ahead. Oh, okay.
Okay. The second thing I wanted to add, discuss investigation findings to section 18, closed session. Maybe append it to lowercase a.
discuss the findings.
Discuss investigation findings in the closed session.
So we will have a closed session, which is B, section 18B.
Yeah, well, 18. And then if we just. Like add it with a comma to A or just make it a D.
A1.
Yeah, A1.
Um, So I'm not clear on what we are discussing. How do we talk about what we discuss without talking about it?
We can't.
So I guess, what is the board doing with the report from there? This is the administration report? So what are you asking the board to do?
I'm asking the board to discuss it, review it in closed session. Because it's non-public data.
Yep, that's clear. I guess I'm not clear, but this is just for discussion. I'm not clear on what the board would do with administrative investigation.
Maybe we should just motion it to the board. Motion to add.
Okay,
Motion
so-
to add investigation.
Then maybe we take them
findings.
separate, so then the 404, is it okay? If we take the 404 one, because I think
I
that's,
think we have to take it
that's
separate.
clear.
That way everybody can make a decision.
Okay. So we'll take the first, which is we removed, I think, the March 23, we added 404 to the, to K, 16K, right? For discussion, so all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So that's changed, and then we have a second. You would like to make another motion?
Motion to add investigation to as A1 in section 18 to the agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
So now it's discussion. So other discussion?
Is this on the agenda somewhere already and you're moving it?
It was on the agenda at the special meeting,
Gotcha.
April 27th. Was that the date of the
Yes.
special meeting? And I motioned to take it off.
I see. At that time?
Yes.
Okay.
It was not complete.
And now you're moving to put it back,
And now.
to put it in that space.
Yes. It has been requested that board oversight has been requested. And pursuant to 413, the request for board oversight is appropriate to me.
Other comments?
And the need for privacy. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
Just putting it,
Also,
clarifying
413,
it.
I think it's subsection J,
Yeah.
mandates of that. Meaning,
So I was unclear on the board's role here because this seemed like an overreach of the board, in the board trying to go into administrative roles and kind of either review the findings or think through or discuss or change or challenge. So because I was unclear, I reached out to the legal for some advice, and they have, as you have all seen, advice that we not to touch this one and that it's not our responsibility as a board. So we can, of course, overrule our legal findings or legal advice, but it's our choice to follow or not.
I don't think that the attorney had all the information. In fact, I'm certain that the attorney didn't have all the information.
So I shared with you guys separately. So other thoughts, comments, questions? Then we'll put it to a motion, which is to add 18AI.
Add investigation to the agenda under section 18 as A1.
A1, okay. Further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I see 3 opposed. 1, 2, 3, 4 abstain. Okay, so it does not pass, 3, 4, 1. All right. Any other agenda item discussions, changes? Okay. Then we will move to the recognition of visitors. Thank you so for kindly, patiently waiting for us as we go through some procedural things. I'd like to ask Kate up to maybe do the introduction, please. Dr. Hinton.
Mr. Heyman couldn't be here tonight as Activities Director, so he's asked me to read the following statement. We would like to recognize each of the members and coaches of our FTC First Tech Challenge teams for their great participation in efforts this school year. MFT, my favorite team, RPM Robotics, Cyber Machina, and Robo Dragons. And Robo Dragons have special recognition as being part of the state championship alliance at the High Tech Kids Minnesota State Championship. We would also like to recognize the members and lead mentors of the FRC Robotics Challenge, Team 2175, the Fighting Calculators, who competed in two competitions outside of the Twin Cities in Fargo, North Dakota, and La Crosse, Wisconsin. Congrats to all the teams and participants on representing MSA so well this year. Thank you. So typically at this time, the
Can we go on this?
members of the team would come through and...
Can we go on the outside just because these cords?
Oh, okay, on the outside, yep, and shake the hands of the board members and then stay up here for a photo.
Photo over there.
That might be easier. We have a lot of robots.
Yes, we do. And I don't think this is.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Thank you.
Hi. Hi, how are you?
Good work, kids.
Congrats.
Yeah, thank you.
Good job. Good work. Congratulations. Congrats, kid. Congrats. Congratulations. Nice work. Nice work. Yeah. It was all me. Well done. Nice work, Gabe.
Thank you.
Good job. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. That's for all you do.
Thanks.
Yeah. So everyone, can we get everyone to come over this way?
I'm trying to get up there.
We're not going that far out. We're not going that far out.
I had a nickel.
Yeah, look those stretches.
Can I just stand right in front of Bonner?
Look, guys. Come on. I'll be like Neo, like this.
Thanks for coming.
Why do you want a gap?
That would rep our team somehow. Or robots.
Yeah. Yeah, fantastic. I mean, every month I'm just continue to be more and more impressed by our school and the accomplishments. So well done, and thanks for bringing the robotics team to our attention. And we had quite a few, and I understand that's not even all of them. So that's great. Yeah. Fantastic. So next one up is item 8, approval of minutes. if you guys are okay, I'm gonna do it in two separate ones because I did not make the April 17th one, so I will abstain from that one. Can somebody make a motion to approve April 17th?
I'll make a motion to approve the April 17th minutes.
I will second that.
Okay, second, further discussion, any errors?
I know this is the first one that Shawnee has done, and I thought it was very thorough. So, excellent work.
I did read through, and I particularly like I think more of the discussion is being
Yeah.
captured, which
Yeah.
so I think that's a build on what we've done. So,
I added a few things, but for the most part, Shawnee did a fantastic job.
great,
Yep.
great.
And,
It's her birthday today.
Oh,
hey,
happy birthday, yeah. Great, okay, I'm gonna put this to a vote then, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, and I will abstain, so one abstention only because I missed that meeting.
Okay, so 601.
Yep.
I hope she doesn't put it's her birthday in the minutes. I don't think she wants that publicized.
Next, I'd like to do the April 27th, or was it that one? So that was a special meeting. I will put through a motion to approve these meeting minutes.
I will second.
Anything needs to be fixed, corrected? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
I have to abstain because I was not here.
Okay, we had two abstentions. Still passes.
5-0.
Is that 502? Yep, great. I'm up next in the chair's report, and to be honest, I think I have a number of the topics covered elsewhere, so I'm gonna give up my 5 minutes tonight in the sake of time, which I've been told is 8 o'clock we need to be finished by, so let's see how we do. Because it's such nice weather. So then I'll turn it over to students reps update. Do you guys have anything?
I don't really have a lot, or anything to report on, but students came to me concerned that like during Black History Month, like the board up around at like Building A, I think, and maybe Building B, said like celebrating Black History Month, but they weren't like they noticed that there wasn't anything for Asian. I forgot what his name was.
Asian Pacific.
Yeah, for the month, and they were wondering if something could be done about that, and if, also other than just a sign, if it could be celebrated in any other ways by that.
Good.
I think adding on to that is like they see the signs and a lot of times they feel like the words are just switched up. They just want to know like how are we celebrating it as a school instead of just putting it as a sign. How are we incorporating it and embracing it as a community? So. But for my part, not just about me. I got 2 more offers from universities over this past month for my athletics. One from Regis University, another one from Washington and Jefferson University in DC. And speaking about DC, I was offered to work in the Senate over in Washington, DC next year from September to January. And I have a interview tomorrow regarding that. So if it goes well, we'll see what happens. But yeah, I just wanted, it's been really fun.
Cool.
That's what's been fun.
Awesome. Yeah, congratulations. Thanks for the update. Great. Switch over to yours.
Just to address what, and yes, we need to do more with the months, but one thing I've been doing in the weekly communications is highlighting some of the things teachers are doing in their classrooms during those months too, so definitely. All right, director's report. So one thing I just want to is kind of just give you an update on the enrollment tracker. So I just kind of posted that so you kind of see where we're at as we're sometimes students drop and we add and where we're at as far as that. So between our last meeting and this one, we had plus 14 more students apply since our April meeting. So the next thing is our scheduling, as we talked about block scheduling, and I put a sample of what that's going to look like next year for our bell times. You kind of see that, so starting at 9:20 with period 1, and then our advisory, as you can see, is 30 minutes every day in between period 1 and period 2. During period 2 is when we'll have lunches, so that's why it's a little bit longer there. Instead of 80 minutes, it's an extra 25 and beyond that, just because our lunches are 25 minutes, and then period 3, period 4. You'll see what later on in the calendar, the revised calendar, we needed to, because of the minimum requirements of instructional hours the state requires, which is 1,020 instructional hours per year. We were short for many years and we were under that amount. So we needed to we added those 2 more instructional days, but we still were short, so we needed to increase our bell schedule to 3:55 dismissal instead of 3:50, which puts us 10 hours over. So we were under, so we had to add 5 more minutes. So now we have 10 extra hours, so if we do have an extra day we have to make up, we're good, then we have that extra time. So, but that's why we went to 3:55 because of the need, because of the state requirement. And then there's the hours, with the lunch schedule students. So that's kind of what that would look like. The staffing and hiring, that is in the consent agenda. And what I did is I just put all of the staff that's back, those that had resigned or not back next year, and then some of the new positions that we're hiring for next year. So that's all in that, the HR transactions for next for 23, 24. So all of those names are in there. And then I will hold off on the survey results till the decision section of the agenda. The next thing that is under the director's report is the affiliated building company, which is the ABC, which is basically our landlord. We had a meeting on May 4th, and our committee consists of myself, Jenny Abs, Kate Hinton, Joelle Bunzak, Wendell Sletton, Denise Speaks, and myself. And Jenny from Bergen kind of gave us an update, basically where the money comes from. As we pay our rent and that money comes in, where does it go? It goes to many different funds, so she kind of explained that to the ABC where that money goes and what that money goes. A majority of it goes for bondholders, and then there's some that go into other areas like repairs, and that's what we've been using that money to. Like if we need to put a wall in, like last summer to make next door more classrooms, addressing like the parking lot, things that we do, we can take it out of the repair fund. So we looked at some of the needs for the school this upcoming summer as projects that need to be done, and the money we have available. So we got some bids, and we'll be meeting again on June 8th to look at those bids and then kind of decide and prioritize what are we going to do as a school to address some of the needs that we have. So that's kind of our meeting. So it's more of just more informational, and then we kind of talk about what we need to do for next year, looking at that funds and what we have. We have like $93,000 that we have available to us, but what we need to do with that. So any questions on either of those items?
So I just have a quick question.
Yes.
I'm not saying that this is just directly towards the schedule for next year.
Yes.
With the block schedules. I'm not saying that the schedule looks weird or whatever. I think it looks good for what it is. I'm just saying, from what I've heard from like a lot of students, is like they've been really concerned with like one thing, the amount of time put into these periods. You know, like sometimes there's also like students with like special needs who can't sit in like one place for like a very long time. And I think like what we have now, like with the 7 periods, that allows us to move in from class to class, it has been working out for, I mean, how long can I say it's been around? I mean, it hasn't really been having a need to switch up, and also like some teachers have said like for their certain departments, it wouldn't work well. So I'm just wondering, what is the purpose that we are switching over to the block schedule for next year?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different reasons. One is there's some contractual issues that we're not providing our staff or teachers prep time. So this will allow us to give prep time to all of our staff daily. It also allows during that prep time that we can have our PLC teams meet more regularly than in the morning. Teachers are coming in early. We were meeting only once a month. Plus, what I mentioned earlier, our student success teams were meeting once a month in the morning before school, where this now can happen during that time because those teams have that common prep time or that common block where they'll be prepped. So they'll be able to meet more, weekly to talk about, whether it's assessments, curriculum alignment, students that are struggling, all that can be done during that time, so we can meet more regularly to make sure we're addressing the needs of all of our students. That's huge. It also gives, like I said, teachers that prep time, but also it allows us to provide more electives to teachers or to students as well. And Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the biggest piece. So,
And speaking of scheduling, when will all students find out like what they're scheduled for next year?
yeah, that's coming really soon.
Mr. Bean said she thought Monday. Not all students, high school students.
Okay, when will middle schoolers find out?
They find out much later. I mean, they know what they're taking, but they'll find out in August.
And I guess a side benefit is, one thing we noticed that, like, for instance, building A is very congested in the hallways. There's less passing times too, so that'll have August as well, so the congestion piece, just a side benefit of it. So. Good question, Joseph.
To your point of student need as well, we've been told at the academics committee that there will be training for teachers on how to schedule their block. So there are movement times, there are opportunities for students to not be confined to one spot for that long.
They're not going to sit and just be left for that for a few minutes. There's definitely going to be some engagement.
And teachers were given the opportunity to take some trainings this year as well.
Okay. Oh, another question. Why is period 2 like longer than the other periods? Like what
Lunch
does
is
that?
in there. That's when your lunch will happen. Your 25-minute lunch.
That makes more sense. Okay.
Mr. Bench, I just have a quick question too about advisory. It says 25 minutes, but the time
Well, it's
adds up
30
to
minutes.
30, yeah.
Yes, it's 30. We switched that, we went to 3:55 and I forgot to adjust that. So yes, it was 30-minute.
Good. Can we move to committees? Item 12. So first up, I guess, any questions for the governance policy committee? Okay, questions for merger, we'll address that one later.
Facilities.
Facility. Any questions for PJ?
Just the conversation that was had during the workshop about why are we communicating with other contractors prior to dealing
Thank you,
with
Wendell.
others?
It's a great question. I appreciate you asking that. So Chairman Dan was approached by one of the contractors that initially had expressed interest. And being a local resident, much as I can gather, he was reaching out just to see where we're at. Since obviously we haven't announced any major construction and the merger did obviously fall through too. Chairman Ellingson asked if I would join, since I had no stake in the game, and it would be a good additional person to have as part of the discussion. I was hoping that's why you asked me. And so it was really a very high level, just talking through some ideas, and I think he was getting a sense as to, what we're thinking now that we're a couple years further down the road. It was more of a touch base. He reached out to us as an organization. We took the conversation. We found it, I think, enlightening in terms of just giving other ideas. And I think one of the things that the Facilities Committee has been charged with is thinking outside the box to find solutions that work for us. So, that was an outcome that kind of came of that. It gave us some other things to think about. So, in answer to your question, that's how that came about. We announced it at the Facilities Committee meeting just to say this was happening, to try to keep it extremely transparent. And having looked at our agreement that we have and the fact that we're on pause, I don't believe we've done anything that would violate that. So, at least it gave us an opportunity to just talk with somebody about his business, which also is helping charter schools. So, it's just good to get some info that way.
Just to build on that, I think he had 2 other projects he's working on right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't, I didn't take it as a sales job for his, but just saying that it is possible to expand in the current macroeconomic setting, what he's seeing for building costs, what he's seeing for investors and whatever. So I think it was just kind of a sparring of different ideas, and he is a member of the community, so he's interested in seeing MSA succeed regardless if we use him or not. So I think that was where it started, and it was a good conversation. But, yeah, good question. Good?
Yeah, any other questions? We kind of covered some of the other things that we talked about.
Okay, then we'll switch to finance.
It's a pretty big meeting last month.
Okay.
I had it pulled up here. So currently, we are at 543 ADM, so we were just slightly under, and that was due to a PSEO change. As of the end of April, we are at our 83.33 percentile of the fiscal year. Expenditures is under at 80.7 in our working budget, and revenues is slightly over at 84.5 our working budget. But overall, very strong cash position at the end of April. Due from the building company is $141,816, so that'll be coming back to us, and then we will be receiving more information on how that money can be used. Other than that, I mean, there's some things you can look through that are just kind of ongoing questions. We received an update on the employee retention credit. We are slotted to receive potentially $643,889.44. The question was brought up, what are the qualifications for this? With the idea that when you hear the word retention, are we retaining people? And we've had big turnover, so does that impact it? But the clause for this was we are able to maintain our current employment status. So our, say we have, 55 employees at the start of COVID, did we maintain that or grow during that time? And that's what reflected in how we received that amount of money. So our $9,000 that we spent for BKDV to do this application is well worth it. We are looking, though, not to receive this funds probably for another 9 to 12 months. So we can't act as if we have the money, but the potential of it being there is coming. The positive for this is there are no restrictions on how we spend this. So it was proposed at the meeting, we're gonna come up with some more ideas, but the proposal was with the teacher pay schedule, we would be able to pay out teachers so that they can move through lanes, because the way that it's separate, or the way that it's delineated right now, there's no equity for those students, or those teachers who are currently here. So the only ones who will really see the benefits are those that are hired after we approve the budget. But with this funding, we would be able to pay out teachers to move up lanes to be more reflective of where their tenure is. Any questions on that?
Yeah, why the delay in receiving?
It's federal money. This is all federal money. It's not state, it's federal.
Right.
It's a grant.
Mhm.
It's a grant or
And
a
it's-
tax credit?
It's a tax credit grant.
Okay.
Yeah,
So you
and
don't
it's for
fall-
any business. It's not just school specific, it's for any business.
So you don't get it like with your refund when you file
No.
your taxes, no? It's different.
How was the number determined?
It's based on the number of employees. There's so much per employee, and it doesn't matter if they're part-time, full-time, they count as one employee. So as long as we kept them employed throughout COVID, we were able to count those employees. And I think it's around 10,000 per quarter, so it's, there's a formula.
Okay.
So, yeah.
The other idea too was after paying out teachers to move lanes, we would then put it in our reserve to help build our bonds as we do our expansion. So it would play in our favor at that point. But if anybody has any other ideas, please bring them to the Finance Committee meeting. We had a draft of the proposed budget for next year. I don't know, do you want to talk on that a little bit?
Yeah, we're working on the budget. We met this morning again because we made sure our proposed salary scale was in there, increase. Also, as we talked about, with adding some of the electives, we have some needs for curriculum, make sure that's reflected in our budget. Plus also with added students, we want to make sure we have enough seats and desks and furniture expenses. So we kind of updated from our April proposed budget to reflect those items as we are adding more students and adding more electives. So those things are also reflected in the pay scale.
There was questions about universal lunch programs, as this is such a new item. Dustin was going to be participating in a training that was the day after our meeting, so he's going to bring back some more information. I think it is something that we as a school need to be aware of because it is funded by tax money, so therefore if we are not implementing it, it will be a topic for discussion by parents. So it's something I think we as a board need to be conscious of in making decisions moving forward. There was conversation on the pay scale update, but we'll take that at a later time.
Sorry, Wendell.
Yep.
So, I mean, is the going assumption that we will implement universal lunch program? We just need to
I
figure
think
out,
we
or-
need to visit the idea of,
Okay,
because it is paid for by tax money.
okay.
Might be.
We're unsure about the
Yeah.
implications of
Yeah.
what this would be, like, what's the reimbursement per meal? What would be required of us, because we don't provide anything?
Currently, we don't, yeah, okay.
Mhm.
For stock and where we're gonna. we
So
have
still
to
some more
come up with
questions,
that food
okay.
vendor.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that would need to be.
Mhm.
Is it fair to say, though, if we can, we will do this,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right?
And it would be it's breakfast and lunch, not just
Okay.
one meal.
Okay.
Yeah, so the question is do we have to have an entire cook staff to be able to
What-
make
what would it
meals?
take to do it?
Or
Okay.
can we cater in meals
can we afford it?
through
Okay.
company or, and, yeah, so we're still waiting on the details as it goes, because it just went through
Yep.
the House and
There's no
Senate, so.
reimbursement per meal, we don't know what that
Yeah.
is, and how much is that
Right.
meal gonna cost us? We gotta find out all that. Is it gonna cost
Mhm.
us money to have the program?
Well, and I
Is
know
it
laws
something we do?
change and things, but at one time we did have like somebody who came catered lunch,
Mhm.
catered. It was a hot lunch. So I don't know, because they didn't have to have their own kitchen. Like we could just have them set up.
Just heat it
Yeah.
up.
Yep, they had heat, everything they had was already heated. So they
Okay.
just came and plugged it in and kids went through.
And some schools, the previous schools, they just send a grab, like a grab bag for breakfast.
Oh, sure.
It's
Yeah.
usually just
Yep.
grab something, so there's lots of ways we can go
Okay.
about it. So it's just a matter of.
How does that look possibly?
Yeah,
Sure.
so discussion down the road as things come through. And then we talked about the building company. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So, we do have a recommendation for PD funds. We are currently at 28,000 for our PD funds, and there was a request for an overage. No, let's see, 26,000. So there was a request for funds to be distributed to teachers above the 1,000 that's regularly given. Where did I put my note? Sorry. And so the request, so we're sitting at $26,812, and the request is for a total of 12,000. So the recommendation to the board would be to approve administration to distribute those funds.
Is that a separate motion or?
It would be a recommendation,
Okay.
but yeah, I can make that as a motion. as
Because it's
the-
not captured in the financial
Yeah.
report?
Yeah, so we'll approve the finances and then I'll do the motion.
Okay.
for- So any further questions, I should say? All right, I make a motion to approve the April finances.
I can second. Any further questions, discussion? All those in favor?
Yeah, I have a
Go ahead,
question.
TJ.
So, yeah, the question is, what are we approving?
The finances,
Just the statement that's.
The second, is it the second one?
yeah, the second and third item,
Not this one. This is the summary
Okay.
of the meeting.
Thank you
the
for
finance
that.
reports.
Yep. Thank you for the clarification.
Good question. Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? I believe it passes 7-0. And then the second,
Is it a recommendation or is it a motion? Does I make the recommendation to,
I guess, how about this for a question? Does the administration normally need the board's approval to spend this money?
I don't believe so.
Then I would just,
Because we're still under budget, yeah.
so then I would say that
Because
the
it's part
administration.
of the teacher handbook that you
Yeah.
can
Request.
So if you go over your 1,000, you can request, and then whatever's left is divvied up amongst.
So do it the other way.
different people.
Any concerns? then we just let the administration administrate. Yeah.
Because we'd have a different conversation if there was a request for over the budget, so
That
we'd
makes
have to be
sense.
like,
Yep.
all right, we'll
That's
delineate $200 per
Okay.
person who applied.
Anything else, finances? Thanks, Wanda. All right, next up, consent agenda. I will motion that we approve the consent agenda, and recall 404 was pulled out.
I'll second.
Hedl seconds, that makes sense. So shouldn't have too much further discussion, but can I put to motion, to vote? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so consent agenda passes unanimously. Moving on to 14, and then we'll have a break, so bear with us. But we're doing good, timing-wise. So DEI, so diversity, equity, inclusion. I have 10 minutes. I don't know how to take that, but we did have a training workshop April 27th. So this was a special, if you will, we brought in a special trainer with an expert that can help take the board through the DEI. I did give a little summary there, but in case you missed it, I just wanted to reiterate a few of the key points. So we reviewed the progress as a school, starting with, ensuring that our mission and vision were more inclusive. We talked about how we recently adopted a number of DEI, focused policies in the 102 series. So we talked through some of those. We spent some time reviewing the costs and benefits of implementing this. So maybe it's not so straightforward. There will be costs and there will be benefits. So we tried to articulate that, within the group. And then we just started the discussion at the end of the time when we needed to call it around how do we get that community engagement more in this piece. So if you think about from the board, we're trying to make a more inclusive mission and vision. We're starting to put policies in place within the past few months that are supportive of this mission and vision. And now we're trying to get to that final piece of how do we make that come to reality. So it's not, as you mentioned earlier, and I think eloquently saying, it's not just a sign in a room, right? I mean, that's what we're trying to say is how do we change? How do we make that change? So that's the next one, which is that community engagement discussion. It is later in the agenda, which is a more broader than just DEI, but I hope DEI is part of that community engagement discussion that we talk about later in the discussion section. So the point's well heard. I don't know that we have the answers, but I think when we take that discussion, it'll be interesting to, what ideas do we have and how do we get that community engaged more? And by community, it's the students, it's the teachers, but it's also the parents. I mean, it's everybody in the bigger community of MSA, right? So the last one are kind of some tactical things, if you will, on the dashboard. So we have a few things which we've identified. So onboarding process improvements. So just recently, I think we are starting a document, if you will. It's kind of a rough skeleton, and that's been shared with us as a board. And then if you guys, I don't know if you have any comments or questions, but please let me know. Otherwise, I would like to send it to the potential new board members so they can kind of see what it looks like to be onboarded at the MSA school board.
I don't have that yet, did I?
I should have sent it to you just recently, but I can double check. So
Oh.
apologies if I missed it. So it's just, it's actually like a one-page one saying, here's the kind of months, here's what happens in April with the elections, I think May, welcome to sit in and watch, and then June. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, if you want to pass it, I think
It was sent on Thursday or Friday
I
last.
think I just sent it recently, as I was going through my mental list of what I need to do before the meeting. So,
I did.
yeah, and I think we can build that up with some more specific links to training and whatnot. I think that will be useful for folks, because when I came on, it was kind of like a fire hose sort of thing, right? Trying to figure out everything at once.
Kind of who to contact.
Yeah, yep. It takes a few months for sure to know what's going on.
It might be a tricky process, but being in the position of coming in the middle of the year, it might be something to consider in that onboarding.
Also, you're right, yep. We should have a special, like, appointed members need to do this. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we just listed that the training before and then after seating, what makes sense before and after seating for new members. And then also the video training from the March workshop was just, we brought in our authorizer and then a lawyer. And I thought they did a nice job for about 1 hour going over a lot of things. It was basically like a little mini training session, but focused on what we should and shouldn't do as board members and how do we, some things are not intuitive unless you've been told you can't. I mean, even just like simple things like reply to all can start to look like a conversation held outside of a meeting, and we can't do that. So it's like, until somebody tells you, you don't know. Then you quickly, I've never seen people abuse it afterwards, but I mean, the first time they have to be told. Okay. So any questions on DEI? Otherwise, I think, I'm hoping more comes from our community discussion section. Okay.
Can we hear from the students? Like, where do you feel, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but what is your general consensus of how the students feel things are moving with what we've done?
Specifically with DEI?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Or you can think about it and ask and bring it back to the next meeting.
Yeah, that gives me time to like actually
Yeah.
collect.
Yeah. Well, then I'm gonna, we don't have to motion, I'm just gonna call that we go to a break. So on the agenda is a 5-minute break, so I have 7:01. So between 7:05 and 7:10, please come back. 7:09. All right, ready? Get it? So welcome back, everyone. We're going to carry on the discussion and decision section. So we have a block of time for this, and I'm hoping that we can keep it under an hour because we do need to reserve some time for a closed session as well tonight. And so, if we could discuss the dissolution of the merger committee.
Sure. I would like to make a motion to dissolve the merger committee.
I second the motion.
Teresa, second. Any
Yeah.
further discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Unanimously passes. That was a quick one. Well done. Now we have, the BOD communications guideline. Heather?
No, I don't have anything more to add, or maybe somebody has some ideas.
We got stuck a little bit, didn't we, on the way to execute the idea. Is that right?
Well, and we talked about how IT had some concerns.
So I don't know how we want to approach it, resolve it, tweak it.
And I know you're busy, Heather, but would it make, or I don't know who would really like to, but somebody have a discussion with our IT and see if we can come back with a recommendation to the board on how do we put all those things together?
Well, I asked for the information from Maggie because she received it from Justin, and from what I took from it, Justin's main concerns is too many cooks in the kitchen when it comes to one email address. He doesn't, when it comes to maybe requesting information and there's too many people working in one email, some things may get lost or misconstrued, so he would just like to, if we were to move forward with board at MSA, one person, this would be Emma, would be the person responsible for that email. Emma would then delineate, is this admin, is this board, and then send it to the proper person. If there's a question to who it goes, then she sends it both to the chair and the director, and then they can delineate who it goes to from there. But the big question was, why is this being not brought up now? And from my understanding is difficult conversations, that there are a certain population that confide in certain individuals, and that isn't what their concerns aren't being communicated to the board as a whole. And then we're being asked to make decisions with an odd man out who's trying to speak for these people, but not, and I use men generally, without providing all of the information. And yes, I understand there's a point of discretion with wanting to be discreet about things, but there is also the opportunity to redact and forward information from there. And so from my standpoint, I feel like there's a lot of information being shared with certain individuals that aren't being shared collectively as the board to help guide decisions. So that is where I feel we need to have this one mailbox. Things could be delineated between board members, and we could be informed when it comes to making decisions.
Yeah. I think we did talk a little bit about this last month. I think we got stuck on the implementation part of it. And I think, yeah.
So like, you had received some concerns about the bylaws and changes.
Just recent ones? Yeah, yeah.
And I can't really change
No,
bylaws,
yeah, understood, yeah.
So I feel like those emails should be, and everybody approved and reviewed those bylaws over the months. So I feel like those emails, or those communications, whatever the form, need to be sent to all of the decision makers. It can't just stop with me.
For you or me, and
Or
I
you.
think, and I think I've shared before too, I mean, maybe as chair I get more of it, just because I don't know who to send it to, so it goes to the chair, and then, so I may get more than most. The ones that I the ones that I choose to keep back is when it's specifically saying, hey, I'm struggling with this board member or that, sorry to point this way, this board member or that board member. Then those ones, it's like, it's harder for me to say, And usually what I will do is email them back and say, are you okay if I share this with the whole board? And then oftentimes they'll come back, no, I shared it with you in confidence, please just know that I need to work, So then I feel a little bit stuck there because I am one of, let's say, 9, but they're reaching out to me just asking for help. So the ones where I get the permission, it's the same ones I feel like they should have almost copied the whole board anyways at the first note. And we get those on occasion too, right? The whole board is copied to an
I mean,
email.
if there's a complaint about somebody, it should, we all sit here as fiduciaries, can,
Which is why I use the
We
word
should see those
redact
things.
and share. So you can redact that information or even reword it in a sense, because I'm the type of person who, if I make a mistake, I have to know. And so I can learn and I can grow from it and reflect on it. But that information isn't being shared.
Well, I think that, I do care, because I think maybe it's not shared as like taking the email and sending it on, but maybe it's being shared in different ways. But the individuals hopefully are aware when things come up.
I'll also state that I do have, as much as I appreciate the information that came out of that meeting, I do have some concerns with how your meeting with Liz and the stakeholders went when items that were discussed on that agenda did not go through the proper channels before bringing it to that level. When I asked Maggie if the items that were on that agenda were brought to her attention as the merger committee, the response was no. When it came to the busing and finance situation, it hadn't gone through the finance committee. And so there's a little frustration in that process. And as much as I value the information that came out of it, even though now it's a moot issue, we have to follow the chain of command.
Yeah, and I can't speak on behalf of the parents. I think they're, but what I got the sense of was frustration from their side, saying they've tried to communicate with the administration and they felt, and this is me speaking on their behalf, they felt that they weren't getting through. And they tried to speak to the board for whatever, open forum or whatever, and they felt they weren't getting through. So then they went to the authorizer. The authorizer asked me if I would sit in as well, and I'm quite sensitive to my time. So it took a lot of convincing to say, what is it that we're going to cover and why isn't this covered in exactly the other forums? And they're saying they tried. So I got it.
When it comes to the busing situation, the finance questions that came up, you didn't even come to me and ask, hey, has this been brought to my attention? You passed the buck to look into that because your inbox was getting too full. So that's where I'm saying we need to confirm that the proper channels have gone through before moving forward with some actions.
Okay. So is this topic B? Are we talking about an email
Yes.
or communication?
We're talking about communication.
Okay.
Yeah, and communication guidelines. So following the chain of command is part of communication guidelines.
I don't want to interrupt that. If you're done, I have another point about email though.
Yeah, please.
Could we set something up that's like an automatic reply? Because I think that's one of the things that maybe can be disconcerting to somebody who has taken the time to voice their thoughts, sent an email, and then because it's languishing and who does this go to and doesn't, should this go to the board meeting in 2-3 weeks? Or should this be something we address right away? Is there a way we could use the automatic reply? And I know it's generic, but at least, thank you, we've received your email. We're going to route this to the proper channels, and we will be getting back to you at our earliest convenience. Something to that effect to at least ensure that people know that their message, their time has been heard, or their concern has been heard.
And then who makes the decision where it gets routed to?
No, and I think that's where we got stuck last month.
Yeah.
That was my proposal. It would be Emma as the assistant to the director.
Chat GPT, maybe?
But then, and then when it gets to everyone, at least there's the transparency, and when whoever gets to make the decision, everybody, I think, gets to be accountable for that. And there doesn't need to be an explanation. Oh, this person, there isn't a summary of an email chain that may not clearly express what directly happened. I think just like having eyes on the email chain is good for accountability.
Well, and there are times we shouldn't reply back because it's like, I can't give you an answer.
Yes.
I can't. And so just to know that it's been received, I still feel strongly, if this is what the board decides to do, that Justin needs to be part of that plan for whatever it is you decide to do moving forward. I wouldn't, does that make sense?
That's why I requested the emails from
Right,
Justin,
right,
so
but
was
but I
informed.
would like, even like, if this is something the board wants to do, I think you need to have that clearly lined out, what that statement, like, here's the return message, or if the person is Emma, then what's that response for this kind of email, this, you know what I mean? I think that needs to be written out very clearly.
Well, like, for example, if somebody's complaining about a particular person, whose responsibility is it to deal? I don't think that should be a person's individual decision to decide how that's dealt with. I think you're right, there needs to be a policy and more than one set of eyes on it.
So we may not be able to solve it tonight. I think I'd like to hear more, but I think we just agree, we bring back to Justin's feedback and we get whatever the nuts and bolts are of this machine that we want to create. Is that okay?
I think first and foremost, we need to go back to what is our fiduciary obligation, and that is informing the board as a whole. So making that decision to share information, whether it's redacted, whether it's through email, whether it's brought up on the agenda, we need to revert back to that. And then I do think we need, like May says, reach out to Justin, kind of get a little more guidance on the situation, because it needs to be discussed.
Yep, good. Okay, we move to 405. We talked a little bit about this earlier today, but any other comments on, well, maybe just a quick, 405 is a new one for us, Heather?
405 is a new one.
So as a new one, we have a discussion decision section, but
Do we need to make a motion for a first read, or is this?
Yeah, I don't think we'll need a first read, and then next month we'll bring it back for a second read.
So is this?
This is the first read.
So would the motion be for, like,
Oh, I don't
first?
think we motioned the
Okay.
first reads.
Okay.
Right, we don't, nor do we.
I was I
Yeah,
didn't
we
know.
just, yeah, you're right.
Well, because we
just-
motion the consent agenda and they're in there.
Right, right. Yes, that's very true. That's odd of us, huh? Yeah, I'm just not.
that's okay. I mean, so this is our first read.
Actually, a very brilliant.
Okay.
This one wasn't, this isn't the pulled off one.
This is 4 or 5 was never on it.
So let's just motion that this is our first read, maybe?
Okay, yeah.
I do have a question, and I'm
Should
I'm
we
a little.
motion first?
Yeah,
Oh,
let's
sorry.
motion and then do
Okay.
the discussion.
So,
Motion to consider 405 as a first read, new charter MSBA policy, proposed policy,
First?
first read.
I will second.
Thank you.
Did you say this is one that isn't changeable? This is statutory?
Substantially reflect legal requirements. I'm not sure what the exceptions for charter school are. So I don't know how.
My question is this policy issues that the admin team is using a point system when it comes to hiring, is that common practice, is that,
They'll have to develop that and
Yeah.
hire veterans. Yeah.
okay, because that's what I'm like, how can we implement this policy if this isn't past practice?
No, they really just have to follow BPA and just do what it says, develop that
Okay.
hiring practice. But that is mandatory, that is.
The point system specifically?
Yeah, it is. For certain job positions.
Okay.
There's a teacher exemption, admin exemption, so certain staff.
So meaning they don't have to use this system for teachers or admin? Is
It's
that-
not just a point system, but there's also requirements on how you can change manager terminate that person's position or role?
Yeah, because it keeps talking about points.
Yeah.
Yep.
Doesn't somewhere describe where the where.
So if you look at
this-
F, 2F, it talks about a 100-point hiring system. The school may or may not use a 100-point hiring system for teaching positions. So, or admin, is that?
Yeah, I thought I saw an administrator
Same.
exception to applying some of the VPA requirements. This is like one where if and when we have veterans applying, and you also do have to
So-
provide.
Oh, because do we currently ask?
No, we're establishing an application that will have that. on
Okay,
it.
because
Shawnee's
I
gonna-
was just wondering if we currently ask, because I know.
We're working on a fillable application form that will have that checkbox.
Okay.
So
That
item
checkbox and a
I,
couple others.
Yeah.
Because if not, you're going to end up not, onboarding or
Got it.
hiring properly.
I'm going to ask to move us along a little bit. I forgot to add time for this subject. So if we have other questions, would we be able to send them to you, Hedl, between now and the second read?
Yeah, or maybe we should just address them, since we're on that roll.
guess
It's always
my,
hard to pick up, sorry.
my thing is, we're gonna, for this, I know it's the first reading, but the admin has to have a plan in place to either follow this or have some sort of directive to implement something to support.
Yeah, so probably like Kraus Anderson might have like a standard
Some of
point
in my
policy.
previous schools, we had a rubric that did have a point system, so it's really easy to implement. And it's always good to have one anyway, so if anybody questions why they weren't hired, then you can pull out the rubric and share why they weren't, because it's always good.
I mean,
I mean,
HR
technically, you don't have to
attorneys-
share that information, but common practice, or best practice. Yeah,
It's just something that we have to invest in.
yeah.
Our admin has to invest in establishing.
So could I ask, is it possible for the next month, second reading of this to see what the admin has proposed for this? Because I want to make sure it's supported.
You can ask, but wouldn't that be an administrative
A
thing to do?
Yeah.
No, no,
but I
what I'm
want, I
saying
wanted to
is-
hear from them what they're going to be doing in order to support this.
Okay.
Yeah.
It is
I'm not-
administrative though.
It's
Yeah.
not the board's purview, so it'd be kind of them to do.
Yeah,
I'm just saying,
yeah.
okay. Maybe for our understanding?
Yeah.
Yeah.
mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, understanding but not approval.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I have a point of clarification on the policy. I just wanted to know more just on a broader aspect, like what the BPA is intended to do. Is it like supposed to allow veterans to
Veterans
become?
Preference Act.
Okay,
Yeah.
so is that like for people to become employed into MSA?
Yes.
Okay, and what would the preference points, like, how does that work? Like, what is the point of preference?
The point of preference is so that they have,
just
so
wanna know what it is.
unfortunately, veterans
Mhm.
are a protected class that have sometimes been historically excluded from opportunities. Stereotype, whatever it might be. So this mandates that it takes the judgment out of that initial step in the door. You can come here and you will get an interview and we will consider you fairly
Okay, thank you.
based on the merits and your qualifications.
Thank you for clarifying.
Can we move? Okay. So handbook, we've given 5 minutes for handbook discussion.
The handbook is red line.
Did we vote?
Get a chance
We
to
just-
see.
There's no vote. Oh, that's right. Did we
I
want
made
to
a
vote?
motion.
Motion, we had a vote.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So all those in favor of the first read of 405? Say aye.
Oh, aye.
Opposed, abstain, so the first read passes. Thank you.
Handbook, the 2023 handbook for next year is in the board packet, and it was red line. Minor changes from the previous year, but the summary does also list the changes that were made. A lot of this was from our HR, Kraus Anderson, made a lot of these recommendations in, as we sent them our handbook, and some of it's from them. A lot of it is language going from a contract to an agreement, so that was a big piece, and a few other things in there too, so. But this did go to the staff for input too, so they provided feedback, and we took that into consideration, and all that as well.
I have a question.
Yes.
So that 2022-23 MSA General Education Chain of Communication, it's crossed out. Does that mean that whole page is going away?
Yes.
That's page, I think it's like page 18 of the 36. Yeah, page 18. The title is crossed out, so does that mean the whole page is disappearing?
Or is it just the diagram that will stay?
Yeah, it's a diagram.
Yeah, the diagram.
The diagram stays?
Or the diagram is gone.
That's what we're asking.
Yeah, that's my question, because if it's staying, then we have to update the language. We don't have assistant directors anymore,
If that is going away.
the whole page.
Is it replaced somewhere?
I don't believe so.
And what do we use for our chain of communication?
The way it reads is, if you look on page 17, it says required communication flow chart. That has not been redlined. It's just the steps for conflict, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 has been taken out, and then I think they're replacing this title with that. Is how I interpret this.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yes.
So the chart will stay.
Chart
It's
stays,
just
the stuff on top is leaving, and it was the required communication flow chart instead of the one down below.
So then we need to change the job names. We have
Principals.
MSA director, and then we have
Yeah.
assistant director. We don't have
Yeah.
assistant directors.
middle school, high school,
Yeah.
principal.
Changed it, yes.
And how does the assistant principal play into this? Is
Right,
another.
where is he? Yeah.
Yeah.
The summary says
What
there's
is
a
it now?
removal of teacher growth plan.
Oh,
Pretty substantial.
the reason was there was a growth plan and then there was a performance improvement plan.
Body taken.
Oh, so we took away the growth plan and just leaving the performance improvement plan.
Were they both being used?
No, we weren't
No.
using the growth plan, we were using the improvement plan. So it wasn't something that was even being used, but in the evaluation process, it had both of those in there, so we removed the growth plan. Just went to, so they're basically doing the same thing.
I don't know if this is new, I mean, because I get most of my notifications from my phone, but it is redlined in here,
Still has 10.
added that the news networks will read MSA Woodbury. Is that
That's
something that's been communicated to the community?
Not yet.
Not yet.
That'll be in.
Right.
Okay.
So we need to
in our
go
staff
after.
handbook,
Charge 3
student
on
handbook.
Okay.
This is now,
Because
this
as
would
no,
now make it.
we happen to have that with
Math and
the
science.
notification
Big
Or
one.
4
for the other math and science school.
Oh, yeah.
I have a question about one of the changes from in the staff handbook. Updating PTO policy to reflect that a teacher workday is based on an 8-hour day. Currently, I believe it's a 7 or 6.
6.
It actually gives you more PTO time. It goes from 70, whatever it is, some hours to 92, that the day is not 8 hours, so when you take a day off, you get for 8 hours.
I had a question about that too.
It's
And
included.
so our rate of pay goes to 8 hours a day, so your daily rate is going to change. With the PTO though, with your PTO, you have more hours to flex as you need. So if you need to just take out 1 hour versus multiple, so like half days would be 3 hours, 4 hours versus, yeah.
Okay.
Does that make sense? I probably didn't clarify that.
I like the summary of changes. I mean, maybe we don't need it for everything, but it was many, many pages, so it's kind of nice to see what's the,
I just like the redundancies taken out of it.
the
Simplified.
redundancies.
Yeah.
Out of the other one?
Yeah.
Yeah, the big one.
A lot of the stuff, yeah. Simplified.
Do we need to approve it tonight? Okay. No, but I mean,
Is this a first read or
Get
a
chance
second
to,
read?
I see some places where there's some commas needed.
did we have any changes? I guess we.
Some grammatical errors
Yeah, I
need
can
to
make
be-
a motion that we.
What do we have to say that tonight? Like if I see like a few places where you need a comma or you don't need a comma, do I have to say that tonight?
So,
Well, it should reflect that.
We could approve it and say, non-material non-substantive.
If you want to make a motion, Teresa, approve it with the change to principals, incorporating principals instead of assistant
I
directors.
can't find it.
On that page 18.
On that one page.
I lost
Yep.
my spot.
Sure.
And then I think
Where it
if,
says we're 9 to 4.
And isn't it items too that don't change the content,
Yeah.
but change the grammar that can be
Can be done.
done without
Without
approval, yeah.
That's what I
So
meant to know. Thanks.
as long as you're not changing the content.
Yeah.
Or admin is authorized.
But you want me to make a motion that we fix this
yeah,
page?
if we change the content a little bit
Okay.
there, yeah.
All right, so help me. I would like to make a motion that we update the language in the chain of communication to reflect current administrative roles.
And to
And to
approve.
include the assistant principal.
Okay. But also the motion includes approving the handbook with those changes?
So you make a motion to approve the handbook with the assumption,
Okay.
yeah.
I, Teresa Ward, do
Right
hereby.
here, right here.
Cheryl Teresa Ward, do hereby make a motion that we approve the handbook with the amendment of page 18 to reflect current administrative roles and adding the role of the assistant principal.
Second, anyone?
I'll second that.
Wendell,
Okay,
second.
Thank you, that was fine.
Further discussion? Good catch. So all those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, abstained, it passes unanimously. Thanks, Randy. Survey, and this one, I do think it makes sense to spend a little bit of time on. So you've got three surveys.
Yeah, 3 surveys, I'll just kind of give you the numbers. We had 91 parents, 22 staff members, and 236 students complete the surveys. Now, better, but still want to get more. I mean, we sent out emails every day during that time, just for a reminder, and emails to staff.
On that, did we have any survey fatigue? Can we tell?
Yes, I heard
Yes.
from parents and students and staff that it was way
Okay,
too
gotcha.
long. And
Because
that,
when we did Survey Monkey, it'll tell you 15%
I
of the
know.
people are going to complete, you know what I mean? Whereas we don't have that when we do this internal one, but anyways.
It's too long. so
Too long, gotcha.
make adjustments once a year.
Okay.
or do 3 short ones.
So
I don't know.
yeah.
If these are all important questions.
Yeah, and stuff. Yeah, they're all-
And I know
they're all-
some are harder to ask at the beginning of the year or the middle, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I felt there was some really good feedback from all 3 stakeholders, for both admin, for the board. I'll let the board kind of see what group responded, but just some recaps of, like we got together. So in the parent survey, there were 27 multiple choice questions. 22 of those received 3s, 5 of them received 4s. So that's, looking at that, that's, good. Some of the positive from parents, I kind of want them to see, the school office staff is friendly and welcoming, the school sets high standards for quality teaching and learning, the academic curriculum meets my expectations and standards, students are well prepared for post-high school options, extracurriculars are each part of their students' school, experience small class size and diversity. Some of the big positives that they brought up. So many areas for growth or stakeholder input, which we've talked about. Communications to family from all school personnel. And new and improved facilities are needed. Those were the big ones that reoccurred for parents. For students, there were 24 multiple choice questions. They were a little bit harder on us, that was good. So there were 3 2s and 21 3s. So from our students. So the positives were friends and teachers, school activities and clubs, the inclusivity and diversity, small class size, and the education that they receive. That were the big positives from our students. The areas of growth were the school board doesn't advocate for the behalf of students, students not showing respect for each other, not being comfortable sharing concerns with school administration and teachers, and quality facilities such as cleanliness and safety, and bullying and student behavior. Those are the big areas needing improvement from our students.
Can I interject now, or do you want to finish the other one? I was just going to add, those are a couple that I picked up on. It was the student behavior towards other students was noted a number of times, and then some safety items, I would just call it, where people were not feeling safe. And so I guess we kind of talked about it a little bit before, but that needs to be addressed, right? I mean, we can't have that. And I don't know who the students are, and you wouldn't either because it's anonymous, but it needs to be sorted out. So it's good that we got the feedback. It's sad that it came through a survey, right? But
If you did it, that's the main thing, right? So
Yeah.
it became a survey, but that's good. So I mean, at the end, then we're meeting and looking at this and looking at what we do to improve safety. You know, we're getting more cameras, you know, those kinds of things, because, you know, we have some blind spots, you know, looking out front of bees, so things like that. So what can we do? The cleanliness piece, you know, we only have a maintenance person 2 hours a day, so we, you know, what can we do to address it? Yes, we know our facilities are worn out and stuff, but there's things we can do to maintain it better.
So I think one thing that would help, because one of the critiques we have is that we either over-survey or we don't survey enough, and then now we're on the over-survey. And then the next critique will come a month later when nothing seems to be done. So if you can help the school and say, we heard you, these are some of the things, and here's what we're doing, I think that'll lend credibility, and then we need to shorten our surveys, fine. But, right, it needs to show that they took the time, because it was a long, you know, a lot of time that they invested to fill that out for us, so let's make sure that they.
I'm hopeful this could be a reoccurring, maybe a little bit shorter, you know, so we can see progress made, right? So we
Yeah.
can see, hopefully next year we're seeing this move in the right direction, that those areas of concern are being addressed.
Okay.
You notice everybody loves the office staff.
Yeah.
Across
yeah.
the board, office staff, yeah.
That was good.
It's high scores.
I'm glad to see the fishy water has resolved. That was the last survey,
Last one.
remember?
Fishy water.
Complained about fishy water.
And then for staff, there was 20 multiple choice questions, 11 were threes and 9 were fours. The positive from staff was mission vision, that they were student, they feel safe at work. The school sets high standards for quality teaching and student learning. The staff shows respect for each other, collaboration with peers is beneficial to their position, student growth. That they would recommend working at MSA to others. They feel supported by administration cares about them. They're comfortable sharing concerns and ideas with school administration, those were the positives. Areas for growth or behavior of students, and competitive pay structure was referenced quite often in there as well. So those were the big ones for the staff.
Mr. Rich.
Yes.
I want to go to question 11, where it says administrators care about me. I think that was actually.
Are you on the student one?
That
We're on
was
staff.
No, staff, okay. I
Yeah,
was
no,
going to talk
yeah,
about the
yeah.
student. If
I
that
can
was-
get rid of the students already, so
Okay.
I wasn't ready.
I was gonna ask about like that part, just like for the student part, like it said that around 73 students said twos, which means some of the time, like
Mhm.
most some of the time, and then 70 said most of the time. So I think, I don't know, I feel like it's a really big topic to talk about, like administrator relationship between students and between admin and between students. I just think that, you know, I'm obviously not trying to name out names, but like what I've heard from students and what I've seen also in my like daily life, like being in MSA, I feel like for especially the middle school students, I understand like how they're rowdy and whatnot, but I feel like at the same time, I feel like there has to be like some leniency towards them. I feel like they are like yelled at a lot to like go to class and whatnot, and I feel like there can be like a much better way to like kind of direct them to where they need to be and whatnot. I remember like I don't know, it was a while back in MSA where there was a period, I don't know if Ms. Berger, if you remember this, but there was like a time where if you had like a little bit of time left to go to class, like some kind of cheesy music would play over the intercom. I remember that like for a little part of time, and that would get students going, whereas now when I'm walking building A, I a lot of times see administration not saying anything to, but I see some admin like literally yelling at the students, like, and very harshly, like, for them to get to where they need to be, and that's not creating a really safe environment for the students, and I feel like a lot of times they can be really scared, or it can like startle them, and that's just kind of the main parts of that, and that's what I just like. I understand we were on the staff one. I was just really looking through the student one, and I just saw like how that one was the really big shift between those two. So I just went like that out.
Unfortunately, the major interaction I have with admin is usually
Like
In the
that.
home.
you know,
Of course.
behavioral
Of course.
concerns, right? That's
Yeah.
kind of their main interaction. So, yes, thanks, Joseph. Any questions? I think that's kind of a recap. I think everybody was able to see all the comments. I think it'll be very helpful for us as we start planning and what stuff that we ask for teachers too. Like PD, what resources do you need, block scheduling, those types of things. So we're going to be discussing that tomorrow, some of the things as we plan PD for next year, getting input from staff. So that was nice for us to ask staff some of those questions. What would you like to see?
So just a thanks to everyone who took the time to fill out the surveys. It was a lot of work, but we appreciate it. And I think the next step is on us now for us to take some action. So thank you for that. Good. Can we move on? Awesome. So we have finalized executive director employment agreement. So this one was, I recall, we were just basically changing the format from a contract to an employment agreement. So we copied the standard employment agreement that we used for every other staff here at MSA, and we were just kind of trying to plug and play in the different things from the contract that we had specific to the executive director. So I guess the question for tonight's agenda is just anything else that we need to do. I know we didn't have the address in last time, but that's an easy.
Yep.
the
Well, we
physical-
didn't want to have it in
Yep,
because this
yep.
is supposed to just be a blank agreement. And that we did talk it through, but then we had to move it. So I didn't hear from anybody else about any additional changes or edits. So were we okay with the agreement aside from putting in, obviously, the highlighted areas for specific people? So the pay, the name, so it would just be that form.
And it looks like we missed it. I think this is public information, so we could technically link it without your address, Randy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did we just agree on the PTO payout? Because I know that was a topic of discussion.
Oh, yeah. And we did not come to an agreement on that.
Are we looking at the April 17th version still? There isn't another one, right?
There's not
It's the
another
only
one.
I see in the
Yep,
draft.
yep.
So this became a point of discussion in the closed meeting, and we realized that it is not
It's not a closed
conducive
meeting.
to closed meetings, so that's why we brought it to this
That's right.
agenda, just for transparency.
Mhm.
So we're continuing discussion now. Yeah. I have to pull it up because it wasn't linked. When we were discussing the PTO payout, there was an idea of assigning a flat rate to allow payout. So currently, I mean, you're familiar with the teacher contract. If teachers don't use their PTO, they're able to pay it out at the end of the year. In the current director's agreement, it states that as well. But from a financial aspect of things, I think I threw my sticky note away. The director is allotted, was it 30
PTO days.
PTO days at a rate of, can we discuss pay?
Cashed in at the executive's daily rate of pay.
Yeah. Which is a substantial amount if you cash it out. The idea, though, is they're a year-round employee, and so should they be entitled to the same benefits as teachers, was part of the discussion. So we were deciding, do we cap that at a certain percentage or amount of days? To ensure that we're meeting our financial or fiduciary duties. Yeah.
discussed, or?
Before we decided it needs to be moved to open meeting, we talked about a minimum of 5 days can be paid out. A maximum of 5 days can be paid out, sorry. Yeah,
It was discussed as a week, right?
yeah, like a full week could be paid.
Vacation week or something.
With the incentive that the ED is using their PTO day during the summer to ensure that they're visible during the school day or related holidays.
And we also wanted to talk about remote versus in-person
Mhm.
for non-student contact days.
So in terms of the PTO being cashed out, use it or lose it or whatever method, wouldn't that be a negotiating point between the school and like, we might have an ED that says, no, I want to be paid out if I don't use it. Or we might have one that says, yeah, okay, if I don't use it, I'll lose it, you know?
I guess I get getting a little confused too, and maybe it's going along your lines, Heather, which is like, the task that we were doing was trying to transfer a contract to the employment agreement. And now what we're doing is we're discussing some of the specific things that were in the old contract.
Yep.
So it's almost like we've taken it another step that, and for me, I would be happy if we have an employment agreement for everyone, because that was the advice from our legal counsel, was that we're a mixture of contracts and employment agreements and it needs to be clean. We net it out with employment agreement, so that's one. And then whether we want to have another discussion on PTO days and remote versus whatever, I feel like that's a second subject, and could be happened at any time, but doesn't necessarily have to be tied to this employment agreement discussion. Switch.
So like the 30 PTO days, that might be a negotiating point, you know? The professional development reimbursement, that might be, you know, maybe those should be blanks, is what I'm saying. In a standard, if this is just like a standard form that you're gonna plug in when you sit down with somebody.
Well, it should be a starting point, don't you think?
And I feel like our starting point is the contract that we agreed our current director would come in and work for us at. So that's like so now we're just changing the language, so it doesn't have a beginning and end date, that's the main difference, right? So now it's you're at will employed until either you or we decide it doesn't make sense anymore. And that's clear.
I guess if we're asking what somebody's salary requirements are, Evelyn can speak on this one. With higher teachers, do we ask what their salary requirements are to see if we're even?
It's based on a
It's
sliding
based on-
pay scale.
Yeah.
Years of experience.
And it's public.
For the administrator, I would say historically, we've had discussions around, what's a reasonable rate based on the market, right? And it's not necessarily in the step and lane of the teachers. So, to move us along, just a proposal that we keep the current, we keep the current setup, we just translated it into an employment agreement. But I have no problem having a discussion about the specifics, but maybe that would make sense when we, I don't know, what do you think? I guess what does the board think?
I don't think we should hamstring future boards or, say it has to go this way or that way. So, I hear what Heddle's saying, and there's gonna be some things that might be dependent on our candidate.
Well, I guess rather than, if you're actually, if we try to picture ourselves sitting down with the ED and going through these things, would we end up crossing, like doing a lot of cross marks and then penciling in? Or where should we just have the blanks?
So,
Like blank line.
and now we can critique it how it was done, but I've done now more than I would like to, but I've done a couple of them. And it's usually a phone call talking about, here's what we're prepared to offer, usually working with finance, and they say, we can go this far, we can go no more, we can do this, we can do that. And I have that kind of in my head as I'm having the discussion. Maybe that's too much power for any one person, but that's how it has been done, and in this case with Randy, you and I would have a discussion, I did the same before. and say, okay, we have an agreement that's within our range that I was given by the finance team, so let's move forward and put it to paper, and usually that's how that's done. So you're right, some of those things will be tweaked and changed, because maybe vacation is more important to them than salary, so then that one goes up a little bit and salary comes down. Those are all negotiating points, I think, so.
Well, my question is are we gonna let Randy negotiate if we make these changes? Like, that has to be a point of discussion as well. I think from a financial aspect, I do believe we should cap it, because we are a charter school, a nonprofit, and we are limited to finances, and it should be budgeted for the year, that
Teachers'
PTO time.
days off are budgeted, we don't get any rollover.
Yep.
There's, I don't know, it would be a financial thing, and I think in the past that's why. Because I don't know how it worked before for admin with days off they didn't use. On the contract, I don't remember.
If I may say something,
Mhm.
I think as an employee of the school, the agreement should be worded similar to the rest of the employees. And if it's anything above and beyond, that would be a negotiating thing between the board and that person. I think the language should be very similar, whatever PTO payout is, whatever, that stuff, so it's consistent for all employees. And then whatever else is additional would be that negotiation piece. That's just my take.
And one could argue being present is more valuable to the school versus somebody who's told they have to take 30 days. Granted, over the summertime, it's at your discretion as long as the work is getting done. I just think paying out $12,000 at the end of the year is pushing our budgets a little tight. But like I said, it has to be budgeted to be approved. So.
And I also want to just add, I appreciate the idea that those are similar or the same as the rest of the staff. I think that, that position is the leader of the staff, right? So that
So
should
do we
be
put it to
indicative.
12? He's allowed to cash out on 12? Because teachers are allowed to cash out at 12.
Well, we
That's all
also
we're
have
given.
30 at the discretion, so,
Yeah.
I think there's some alignment, and maybe that's a future discussion,
Yep.
so.
And then just look at other avenues.
That's what I'm wondering if for tonight, not to kick it down, but in the past, when we've had these discussions, we kind of pooled other schools too, and just kind of seeing what, because I think even the salary, we were saying, what's a reasonable salary? So we went out and looked at some other, because that's our competition. I know we're a charter school, but we still, so we had the salaries of other executive directors, and we were able to say, okay, we can be in this range, and maybe the same for the PTO. So I'm fine having that discussion. I just wonder if we can move the agreement along such that we're in a spot, and then
When does it have to be signed by again, though?
so that's the thing is, it's continuous. Next month, we can still have a discussion about non-performance or performance, and at any month, we can, so I think we can change it, sorry, Randy, but I think we can change it at any time.
So he would still operate under the current, even if we have to push it to like July. I'm not saying that we push it to July.
So I think what we were trying to do was, everyone else is on the agreements, and I think this is our last one, I believe, is yours, is that correct? Is that right? So we needed to get this switched over, and then we're done with renewals, because yours actually would have expired, and we'd have to do another contract in the old days, so we were trying to beat that. So it needs to be done.
So before our next meeting, we need to look for what was past
Financial.
practice
Yep, and financial.
and financial.
Could you or your team help and just take a look and see and then we can have a discussion specifically about
Yeah.
PTO and, okay, so basically approved, well, we can motion, but basically approved just pending the PTO, correct?
Yeah.
So I will motion that this is the one that we discussed last month,
The new
a new
agreement.
template, we will put in the address, and we will finalize the PTO in the next
And
month's
the pay.
discussion. And the pay, okay,
I'll second that.
okay. All those in favor? Question?
Yeah. If we're pending more. what
We're
are the-
approving a template,
Okay. That's fine.
and we can change it next month.
We need to, and it sounds like we'll have a discussion on PTO, we can revise the salary as well. Yeah. All right? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay. So 6-0-1.
No, I didn't abstain.
Oh,
That's
you opposed?
against. Okay.
Okay, 6-1-0. All
What was the
right.
motion?
Was
To
just
approve
to
the
approve
template.
the template. yeah.
Okay.
So we are on G, we are running a little behind here, but, so,
Come on.
yeah, community, I'll talk faster. Community member feedback, I'm gonna say we kind of covered that one for the sake of time. We covered that one during our workshop. So basically, just so everyone's aware, if you didn't watch the workshop, we did go over a number of items that have been fed back to the whole board, to myself, to individuals. We discussed a little bit about how we engage our community better. So that's in the workshop, which was recorded. You can watch that one. Then let's move to the community listening session / state of the school annual meeting. We had at one time put March 23rd, that should have been May 23rd, but it is for discussion here as a board. So the idea is, maybe instead of doing either the open forum or the board meeting as is, would it make sense to have some setting where we could have the community come? And how do we do that? How would they interact? Because if we have more than a majority, we have to do an open meeting, so we would post it, that's by law. And then it's just a question of, do we stream it? Do we not? Does the community, like, remember we had the expansion meeting with the community 8 months ago or something, where we had Post-it notes up on boards? So like, any and all of those ideas are fair game. What's the board thinking about how do we better engage the community?
I'd like to start off, but I do like the idea. I just think the timeliness of it isn't going to benefit us. I mean, less than a week turnover is not gonna draw much of a crowd. I do propose that in the future, we consider hosting other open forum listening sessions. Preferably, I think we could consider something during conference time when we have families in and out and keeping
That's
it
a good idea.
open to the public in that sense. And that way, teachers can be on rotation, board members can be on rotation into those listening sessions. We could keep it under forum or under quorum. But I just think that in a timely fashion, I don't think we're doing ourselves a service.
And May 23rd just
Yeah.
seems so late in the school year.
Tomorrow, we haven't even advertised it, so it may a very busy month.
Can we also propose one for maybe the fall, like
Yeah.
during open
Yeah.
house? And I still think we could still have a state of the school,
Yep.
and that could be recorded and sent out via email, but I think timely-wise, we're not doing ourselves a favor here.
Also, we have our facility committee meeting and talk about the why, and a lot of that can be shared. I think what the facility committee is working on would be some really good starting points for that,
Mhm.
that meeting. So that meeting will take place for that meeting.
So I agree, I don't want to rush it. I was feeling rushed by the end of the school year and thinking June, July, August is almost like impossible to be pulling in teachers and pulling in maybe even parents if everyone's out, so.
Just playing devil's advocate, just for us to consider. Since we went through that process, exploring merger with WLA, is there more that needs to be done or should be done? I know communication was put out a couple of times right after those discussions broke off. And I think shared, that's not an option. But I guess I'm just raising the question, has enough been communicated as to why that happened or why we went down that path and why that's no longer a discussion? Or do we feel that that has been communicated successfully?
I think it's something we could do more about, but also saying if we want to hear from you, we're gonna have a meeting, right, start with the fire a little bit, saying, hey, we want to hear from parents, we're gonna have this meeting on open house, and we want to have parents provide their input or something like that. I think it's not going to start talking about that meeting.
Other
Part of
thoughts?
that could be a part of the state of the school address in the sense that communicating more.
Yeah, at one time, we were just playing with ideas, and this, I don't know if Maggie, were you in that discussion too? I can't recall. But anyways, we were talking about, could we just give a state of, here's like merger, or expansion, facilities, just a few of the bigger topics, and then, maybe DEI, we could talk through that, and just, hit 10, 15-minute state of the school, because maybe not everyone's heard that, and then allow some feedback, but then it seems like it's turning into kind of an open forum, just in a different day and different night, and we didn't want that, we already have an open forum, so. Okay, well then, I guess what I'm hearing is maybe a little bit too soon to plan appropriately, and then the other one is maybe we could do a better job in the fall, if we plan, so, is that kind of where we're at?
I know MSBA has some really good guidelines on community that I can
Okay.
copy and
Yeah,
share
that
with
would
the
be good.
board, and we can kind of
Okay,
go from there.
good.
Who is that?
MSBA, it's the trainings that.
And then that's good to share, because I don't think I took the same training as you did, right? So I don't,
This
I might not
is
have seen that
specific
one.
to representing your community through policies and engagement.
Okay,
So,
great.
yeah.
All right, then I'm gonna move us to the school calendar. Yeah.
Calendar, a couple of revisions. One, there was, under the key, there was a date there was 2 dates that were wrong, so those were corrected. They weren't the same as in the calendar itself. So one was a conference date, one was one of our ninth grade meeting nights. So those were the wrong date, so we fixed those, but also to reflect the minutes, or the hours, I'm sorry, the instruction hours, which is right after, you see right after the number of student days of 167, we're supposed to put a number of hours. So that is, those are the 3 changes that were made.
Again, they are total hours.
Yep.
What are the other two?
One was the ninth grade meeting
Okay.
date, and then our fall conference is one of the dates as well.
Thank you.
So they've all been adjusted and things.
So it's more of the information at the bottom versus.
Yes.
Okay.
The top was correct, it's just the date was wrong on the
Okay.
bottom.
And that list is correct.
I just want to make sure that's all correct. Those are just the 3 things.
Okay. I can move to approve the amended agenda, as you have amended it. Second, anyone?
I'll second.
Maggie, second. All those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so passes unanimous. Thank you. And now we have teacher pay scale.
Pay scale, so there's 3 of them attached here. One is the current salary scale, which kind of gives you the map of where we started from. And then the 23, 24 kind of shows what the proposal is. As you can see, what we've basically done is we've eliminated the bottom steps because our starting pay was so much below the area that, as AJ mentioned, we're missing some new people that we want to have employed at MSA because our starting pay was so low. So what we've done is we've eliminated the bottom steps so we can start much higher compared to our neighboring school districts. And then we've eliminated a few steps along the way just to kind of get our teachers that are in the pay scale caught up to our area schools. So the first one, if you look at the 23-24, the top it says 3.7% raise. So really what that is we added 2 days to the calendar. So we went from 165 to 167 student contact days. So 1.7% of the raise is for those 2 additional days that staff is working, or teachers are working. So we adjusted the pay scale 2% and then the 1.7% for those 2 extra days. That's how we got to the 3.7%.
And how, can we afford it, I guess?
Yep, it's already been in the budget, it was in last month's budget, or the April budget that we came from.
Okay.
Proposed.
Did
We're
we
positive
approve
40
it?
After everything, we're positive $40-some thousand.
We have not had a final budget approved yet.
Okay. Oh, that's right, you're still working on the final budget, yeah, okay, that's right. Okay.
It was so confusing. So, because the step and lane used to be your year, and now it's not. And so it was very confusing trying to figure out, because I was looking at it, and I'm like, oh my. And then I was like, oh. So it had to be explained to me, by
So-
our financial
So
person.
step and lane is not the year anymore. It's just what lane you're in.
It's where you're hired the lane and then you go to the next lane.
Every
Sometimes
year
it's
you go to the
years
next
of
lane.
service, and what Wendell was saying, when we get the, the employee retention credit, we can address some of those,
Okay.
where maybe someone's here 10 years, but they're at step 7, that's something we'll have to look at.
Okay.
What that financial implication.
It does
would be
need to be made clear though to teachers, because that was not made
No.
clear in our meeting. That was not how it goes.
So it's, the next year you would be at the mark you were at this year minus 4, or 5, is it 5? It does, you go down.
Kate, yeah.
What you're seeing right here doesn't have the key to the old stuff. The one that we have, we just didn't put it in there because then there was like 2 or 3 different step marks. And when you went to the 24, 25, so originally we knocked out 5 steps at the bottom of the pay scale. Then in order to shorten it up to 26 years from 41, then we've knocked out some other steps along the way. Everyone stays where they are, they just move faster through the pay scale.
Okay.
Now, what we talked about with the employee retention grant would be then to buy some of those staff some more steps, but that's really expensive to move everybody down there, because that could cost, $7,000 to $10,000 per employee right off the bat, and that's unaffordable. But we could make some movement to try and help that with that extra money.
Okay.
And then set a little trust fund to be able to continue to pay that over the years.
I mean, it's moving in the direction we want, which is trying to help support our teachers
These
more,
are
right?
not
And
years, right?
So Kate, just to clarify, if you're on year 12 this year, next year you would be on year 9?
So it's not quite that clear. I mean, I could show you, but to try and, it's gonna send Dan and DJ over an edge with how much time it would take to
Okay.
explain it right now. But I can sit down with anybody and show them, but.
But what I heard is nobody's going backwards, you're at
No
least the
one's going
same,
backwards.
and we're looking at a 3.7% increase that we can afford.
I think the minimum was like 4% that any one person is getting, and the most was like 12, just because of.
Where they are, sure.
So what we're hearing is more
Step
clarifications.
and 100%
Yeah.
increase, so.
We can afford it, it just needs to be clarified to some staff.
Yeah.
A little bit more.
Yeah.
I would just add, I appreciate the work that's done. I don't think it goes far enough. I don't think in terms of where the market is right now, I don't think it's enough. I think the whole bottom should come up. And I'm trying not to wear my other hat. I'm trying to think of it from a board perspective where we have to be, fiscally responsible. But I think I'm worried that our ability to retain and hire is still impacted even with a 3.7, which is a cost of living increase. It is not a raise of substance that gets us to where we need to be. So I just need to voice that because I don't think we're there yet.
And I think we agree with you, DJ, it's a starting point. And at other schools, at our schools, depending on when we've adjusted pay scales because of that. At first, it's not great for everybody. I mean, you do the best you can with the money you have, but we'll try to right this ship as we, go through years and years. So it's just a starting point, so that starting teachers that don't have any experience, making 36,000, they're actually in the 4s now, the 40s, because we weren't getting anybody. So at least we're starting to move in the right direction. And we've done what we can as far as, financial piece, what we can afford right now. Are we there yet? No, but at least we're pushing the needle in the right direction.
But I think, DJ, you have the right hat. I mean, this is for the school, right? I mean, we are not going to exist if we don't have teachers.
Right.
And so we need, that's what we're trying to figure out is, we have a stopgap for next year, maybe, right? But we need to have a strategy for the next 3 to 5 years.
And I would also argue, I think we have to make it abundantly clear when we're talking about people's income. Even though it's public information, I think it's critically important that it's clear and understandable. And if we're removing lanes and the steps and lanes don't correspond to how many years, that's confusing. So I think we have to do our due diligence to really make it explainable, clear, intuitive, and really we have to be looking at the market rates.
Further discussion? Otherwise I would make a motion to, we're only approving the 23-24 pay scale, correct? And do we need to approve that, or do we approve it in the budget next, when the budget comes?
Well, in order to hire people, it'd be good, you know, I mean, because we want to.
All right.
Say pay scale.
So I'll make a.
It is reflected, it'll be reflected in our budget, because we already added in the 3.7 and then additional salaries, which was quite a bit just to fit this. You know, I know it's not where we need to be, but it costs us, you know, a little bit in our budget to get to this part.
So I move to approve the 23-24 pay scale.
I'll second that.
Wendell seconds. Further discussion? Good discussion. All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? So I heard 6-1-0. Now we're at 404, item K, which was pulled out. Maybe Hedo, are you able to speak to 404?
Yes, so currently, our current 404 says will elect to do, Roman numeral 1, purpose. Current posted policy says will elect to do background checks. And the MSBA charter model says may also elect to do background checks.
Wow.
For volunteers, independent contractors, and student employees in math and science. So I just wanted, you know, what do we want to?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Do we want to just require, and, you know, board members, committee members, we are for volunteers too. People with student contact, working with students, so do we?
So with
And
the
then
language
it's
of
may.
will, if parents are on a committee, they would have to pass a background check in order to
All
sit on that
volunteers.
committee.
Mhm.
If we put in may, we could have that discretion with community members if they're not interacting with children.
Yeah, I'm not sure who would be the decider. Who would decide, admin would
It's a
decide
tough one.
for us?
I really like us going towards the standard, right, which looks like it allows some discretion, right? And I'm not saying that I choose that one because of may or will, but just because that's the standard. And I didn't catch, one said may and one catch will. I'm glad you did, because those are two very different things. But, I mean, it's one of those things where if it was redlined in the future, if we said we want to change this from may to will, then we could have that discussion. But right now, boy, I don't know that I would catch it again if it came in front of me again in another year or two's time, unless it was redlined. And so I guess my point is to you, or my point to all of us is that I like having the standard, and then we can, you know, as or if we need to change it. But I can see the point as well as will. It's very clear. There's no discretion. I don't want to have somebody come to us and say, you did a background check on me because of this X, Y, or Z. And so then I agree that it puts us in a tough spot to have discretion as to who we do background checks on, as opposed to, I think maybe we just say may, and what if a proposal is the administration says we choose to do all volunteers. The administration chooses that.
A question actually came to me. I think you sent it to me.
Maybe.
Because I had mentioned in a governance committee meeting that members need to be, at the time, members needed to be appointed to the board and background checked.
And I think my question was, I hadn't done that before. So-
Right, and so then
so-
I sent you the copies of the
yeah.
policies or the bylaws that said appointed by the chair. I think it said,
Yeah.
I think that's what the bylaw said, was that committee members need to be appointed by the chair.
Okay.
And then 404 says volunteers will be background checked. So, but your practice was not to do that.
Which doesn't make it right, it's just that's what I was doing.
I know, that's why I
what-
thought,
so-
okay, who's the decision maker?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you know, if I can I decide that committee members must be background checked? Maybe finance committee says, no, we don't care if you're background checked.
Careful, I'm embezzler.
Well, my issue with saying will and then mandating that every volunteer be background checked, that's a 2-week process, if not more. So that puts everything on delay. At our committee level meetings, we're not directly interacting with students, however, we are influencing what happens for our students. So that's my hesitancy with having will.
What is the policy for staff that is working with students? Is it will?
They have to be, yeah.
It's a requirement there.
Yeah.
And the board so far has to.
But these are
No,
committee
they-
members that are discussing.
Yeah.
Or other volunteers
volunteers.
helping out. PTA,
Pizza day.
PTA.
That seems wrong.
The other point that Teresa just made is if we're mandating that committee members background check, they have to pay to be on that committee now.
And that's an equity piece, like,
No, I think the school
In the
pays.
past, the school has paid, it's like
School pays
$8, but still.
The teachers have to pay for their own background check.
Yeah, that is a,
Teachers have to pay for their own.
It's a different background check too. Right. I mean, it doesn't mandate what type of background check. I think if it's an $8 thing for everybody, why dicker over who gets background checked and who doesn't? I think anybody who affects the outcome of whether they're in direct contact or not. Because, yeah, the finance committee, could be embezzling money. There's just all different things that we could be doing that we're not foreseeing. That why not be safer than not?
I hear what you're saying, but I think we do still need to balance it with what Teresa mentioned, is that we might need somebody to help on pizza day tomorrow.
That was
That's
gonna be
not
my
a
next
committee.
question.
No, I know that, but, it's a long.
it says
Say that's
other
all
volunteers though.
Yeah.
But I don't want somebody handed,
No,
pizza.
that makes total sense too,
You gotta watch who
you
you
wanna.
let in the building.
Right,
If you're
right,
having
right.
contact with kids, those people definitely need to.
Because I'm glad you mentioned pizza day, because are all PTO members background checked? I'm not accusing anybody of not, but just, because they're working with the students, they're.
The parents
No, and
going to
they're
the
great.
senior
I
only
mean,
party
it's
all
a
have to
great
be
help, I
background
think,
checked.
for the school
I'm
to
hearing
run successfully.
PTO's background checked. Okay, Kim is in charge. I mean,
And does the PTO pay for that then, or is the school? It's volunteer, okay.
volunteers are
Yeah.
paid.
Yeah, I don't think we should have to.
I don't know.
Not to help the school,
Not
yeah,
if
not to help the
we're,
school.
not if we're requiring it, I don't.
We take all the volunteers we can get. Yep.
So should PTO start submitting reimbursement for background check?
They don't have to pay right now.
Okay,
They do not
so
have
that's
to
not
pay.
on the individual volunteers, it's on us?
No, yes, the school pays for them to do a background check.
Okay, okay. Just wanted the equity piece.
But I can see that it makes sense that they have.
Is this something that admin kind of delineates right now? Who gets background checked and who doesn't?
Less direct supervision of students as well.
Or interaction with?
Yes, interactions. It's like if someone's volunteering and they're leading garden on a Saturday, a background check. There's some things that if they have interaction with kids, and that's what we're using as our background.
I would feel comfortable with May and then, asking the administration to manage it consistently. And then I need to do a better job of also managing consistently, because if we have committee members, they also need to get a volunteer. Because they may reach out to us directly, and we have to then remember that they need a background check, right? And the current bylaws, does it need to be appointed by the chair? No, okay, we took that out, so the previous ones did.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly what it says.
Okay.
right now about committees.
So I think that was a good decision to take that out.
Specific appointment power is not.
Okay. So, do you want to make a motion, or do you,
What am I motioning?
the May? Is that's in the
Okay, let me do
proposed one,
this.
right?
Yeah, so. I want to make a motion asking if who wants to vote for keeping may also elect as proposed in the first read? So I will say motion to approve first, as a first read, 404 employment background check. Period. Right?
And that's
Because it said proposed.
the proposed one. Yep,
That-
okay,
yep, it says
gotcha.
on here.
I can second that. Other discussion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye. Opposed? Abstained? So wait, you made a motion for it and you opposed it?
Yes, I did.
What did you want to do?
I wanted it to say will. like our current
Okay,
policy
that's
does.
fine, okay,
But can I do that?
I think so.
Yeah, I don't need to support my own motion.
Okay, I
right?
just wanted to
That's
make sure.
very strange,
Okay,
though,
so
but-
then it was 5-2 for the May, correct?
Mhm.
Okay.
Can I get the first and second on that motion?
I think I did it, wait, you did it first, and I seconded it,
Okay.
correct?
I made the motion.
You made the motion.
Yeah, yep.
Thank you.
Okay. So that's the last of our discussion, correct? I believe so. So, future items, just really quickly, we will do board seating in June. That will be done just, if you're listening, board members, that'll be done towards the end of the June session. So we'll go through the last business and then we'll seat towards the end, so there's no confusion over who votes on what, because I think you'll be official in the July one. We do have the Minnesota State High School League resolution for membership that needs to be approved. And then July, we have, an idea right now is that we would kind of be more focused on the new board onboarding, training and workshop, and then we have a student parent handbook that's due. Okay?
Were you
Fine.
talking about changing the June meeting?
To
June
Thursday.
19th is Monday.
We
and
already,
that's
it's already,
Juneteenth,
right, we already are scheduled for the 20th.
The 20th, which is Tuesday.
Yes.
Okay, so that was the second portion of it. If that's already in play, then that's great. I would
You're
just.
okay with the 20th?
Yeah, and I would
Okay.
make the motion at the next meeting to
To
adjust us to
Thursdays. Okay,
Thursday.
so let's make sure we capture that we can get that for the next one. So,
Point of clarification, we approve teacher pay scale yearly, so that's why we didn't approve 24, 25. Is that correct?
I'm assuming that we'll come back again for the 24, 25 around this
Okay.
time next year, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was just,
Yep.
point of clarification.
Just 1 year, we
Yeah.
just approved 1 year, yeah. Good question. Then I would like to make a move into a closed session, so just, and I think a question did come up before, so our previous closed session was not completed, will be continued at today's closed session, so for those looking for a statement, this is the continuation of our last meeting. And then, so I am going to ask that this meeting be closed pursuant to Minnesota State Statute 13D.05, sub 3B, to evaluate the performance of an individual subject to the board's authority. So for the public, I would ask, and students as well, you guys, thanks so much for your participation tonight. Good session. We can step out, and then we will need to turn off YouTube at 8:28 p.m. Open up the meeting here at 9:38.
I second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So YouTube's back on again, so welcome for those watching remotely. So we did conclude our meeting tonight where we discussed the performance of an individual subject to the board authority, and the meeting was closed pursuant to the Minnesota State Statute 13D05 sub 3B. So I would like to make a motion to adjourn, again at 9:38.
I'll second.
DJ seconds, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes, meeting adjourned.